These companies support the Thom Hartmann Program. They are HelloFresh, the #1 meal kit delivery service. More info at HelloFresh.com, code TOM. The Hidden History of Big Brother in America, How the Death of Privacy and the Rise of Surveillance Threaten Us and Our Democracy by Thom Hartmann. More information at all book outlets. Wild Alaskan Company, 100% sustainable wild-caught seafood delivered right to your door. More info at wildalaskancompany.com/Tom. Cozy Earth, better sleep, better you. More info at cozyearth.com, promo code TOM. The latest views and opinions from U.S. politics and other fascinating subjects too, including cutting-edge science reports at hartmanreport.com. And Dinovite, a whole food supplement for your pet's immune system. More info at dinovite.com.
Well, here we are 4/5 of the way through the week and still rolling. It's still moving along with our Free Speech TV Fund Drive. A special thanks to those of you who have called in or made your contributions, texted 44321 or called 877-378-8669 or gone to Free Speech TV to make your contributions. Thank you for those of you who have already done so. A number of people have answered the call. We're still behind, a little bit behind on our goals for the week and way behind on our goal for this pledge drive, which will run more than a week. But let's try to speed it up, huh? Let's try to get a lot of this out of the way. Please call now, 877-378-8669, or text FSTV to 44321, and they'll bounce a link back to you that you can use to make a contribution right away, and you'll know it's a safe link because it's a response to a text you sent out. There are a whole bunch of goodies that Free Speech TV is offering on this pledge drive. My favorite, of course, is The Hidden History of Big Brother in America. I'll get to that in just a second because whenever I've got a brand new book out, we always toss it into these pledge drives, and I've been doing 2 a year now for 4 years. I guess this is the 7th book. So anyway, I'll get to that in a second. Here's the list. With a $20 gift, these are your one-time gifts. With a $20 gift, you have your choice of the Free Speech TV Clear sticker, or the Thom Hartmann University bumper sticker, or the Free Speech TV bumper sticker. With a $50 gift, there's the Free Speech TV Seed Bomb. Celebrate Earth Day every day. These are, you just toss them out in the lawn or put them in the some soft dirt, and boom, you're going to have some flowers. They're beautiful. With a $75 gift, you have your choice of the Free Speech TV hat or the Free Speech TV mug. With a $100 gift, Free Speech TV will plant a tree for you, or their contractor will plant a tree for you for reforestation, regreening the world, something that the world rather desperately needs right now. With a $120 gift, you can get your autographed copy of my newest book. It doesn't even come out for another week, but Free Speech TV, I know, got a couple of cases of them in advance from the publisher. The Hidden History of Big Brother, How the Death of Privacy and the Rise of Surveillance Threaten Us and Our Democracy. And it'll have a book plate in there that I have autographed for you. Or if you don't want the book, you can get with a $120 gift, you can get the Free Speech TV Solidarity t-shirt. With a $240 gift, you can join a bunch of us on a Free Speech TV meet and greet. These are always fun and interesting. Get a bunch of people together and talk about anything you want. It's not recorded. It's just, extemporaneous. And contemporaneous. So that's with a $240 gift. And with a $1,000 gift, you can come to Portland once, I don't know how long it's going to be, frankly. But I'm hoping within the next 6 months or so that everything is just settled down to the point where we can say, okay, cool, we can have people back in the studio. But that's with a $1,000 gift, the meet and greet, and I'll buy you lunch down the street as well. We'll work all that out. But the bottom line is that these pledge drives are what keeps this network on the air. There's not much else. There are some groups and some foundations and some wealthy individuals who put up matches, and we're hoping that there will be some of those throughout the next few weeks of the fund drive. But even with that, it really is you. You are who keeps this network on the air. And I think of Free Speech TV as family. I think of you as family. This is we have conversations every day on the radio. Sometimes people chastise me. Sometimes they put me in my place. Sometimes I learn from them. Occasionally I get a pat on the back. It's all good, but this is how a family functions. This Free Speech TV family. I don't know of anything like this that exists anyplace else. It's more personal and more intimate and more real, in my experience, than Facebook or other social media. I think we've built strong bonds, many of us, to each other over the years. So help support our family, huh? Become part of the Free Speech TV family with a one-time gift. You can get one of these premiums, these free gifts, and or a sustaining gift. It's pretty painless to call and say, hey, I'd like that new book from Hartmann there, and here's my $120. And by the way, after you've done that, sign me up for $10 a month for the rest of the year, or for the next year, because I'd like to know that every month, a cup of coffee's worth of my money is going to help support Free Speech TV. I've always thought of money as a stand-in for energy, whether it's psychic or physical or whatever, and in many ways it is. And so I'm asking you to share your energy, your potential, or even kinetic energy with Free Speech TV, with all the rest of our family. Keep this show on the air, on this network, keep this network on the air more generally, to Free Speech TV's program.
This is the Thom Hartmann Program.
Well, happy Thursday. We've got a lot to talk about today. In the first hour of our program, which we will start in just a moment, Congressman Mark Pocan will be with us for a National Progressive Townhall Meeting for the full hour, taking your calls at 202-808-9925. Also, I want to get into my rant today. Are Republicans patriotic enough to support a ban on Russian oil imports without turning it into a hustle? Will Republicans rally unconditionally to Ukraine's side if it costs us more at the gas pump and raises the price of home heating oil? Also, in the second hour, Tucker Carlson goes off on an epic racist rant about Judge Ketanji Brown Jackson. I want to get into that. And in our third hour, Conversations of the Great Minds, a deep dive into flat earthers, conspiracy culture, and why people will believe anything. We are now seeing, by the way, all across the spectrum of the anti-vax conspiracy people online, they're now taking pro-Putin conspiracies as well. Apparently, there's a lot of Russian trolls driving this stuff, and that's going to be an interesting revelation if it turns out to be the case. And also, Amy Westervelt will be with us in the third hour about the Supreme Court case that threatens basically to destroy the Environmental Protection Agency. The conservatives on the court getting ready to just absolutely wipe this out. Also, a bookstore event coming up next Tuesday. My new book, it's out next week, The Hidden History of Big Brother in America, How the Death of Privacy and the Rise of Surveillance Threaten Us and Our Democracy. So an awful lot going on there. But let's start out with Middays with Mark. Congressman Mark Pocan is with us here on this Thursday for the hour, taking your calls. Congressman Pocan, a member of the Congressional Progressive Caucus, represents the 2nd District of Wisconsin. His website is pocan.house.gov. You can tweet him at Rep. Mark Pocan. He's on the Appropriations, Education, and Labor Committees in the House. And Congressman, welcome back to the program. I have two quick questions for you, in addition to the, whatever you want to talk about. But first, I wanted to offer our condolences. I understand your mother passed away a couple of days ago. And just, let you know that we're thinking of you and your family.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Tom. Appreciate that.
My questions are, the January 6th committee says that it has evidence showing Donald Trump committed crimes. This is the first time that an official body has used the word crime and the word Trump in the same sentence, outside of a prosecutor. At least the first time, is, to the best of my knowledge, the January 6th committee has. And I'm wondering your thoughts on that. And I'm also wondering your thoughts on this report that is just going viral right now around the internet, that our intel agencies are saying that the Russians are planning public executions of Ukrainian politicians once they seize the country.
Yeah, well, it's great to be with you, Tom. And again, thanks for the kind words about my mother. She was 93. She just turned 93 on Saturday, but very quickly, the combination of COVID, pneumonia, and sepsis all kind of found out within, I think 8 to maybe at most 10 hours, everything happened. So it's been a little bit of a whirlwind week in D.C., kind of flying there and back. I'm in Wisconsin now. Also, yesterday I was with the president on Air Force One to Wisconsin, where he was in Superior talking about some of the infrastructure acts. So it's been a lot, and I got to admit I haven't had a lot of sleep. So I'm going to apologize up front to your listeners. On the 1-6 Commission, I think what we're realizing is they're coming to the end of their work, right? And they're starting to have seen a lot of dots and connected enough that they think they've got some things they can really share with the public that I think will be significant. And while I haven't seen any of it directly, I do know that that's exactly what they've been doing, is working to the culmination of everything. So it will be very interesting to see, and when they have hearings, what all that means. To the other point, I have to admit, this is one where I think Pramila Jayapal and I were walking together to the first intelligence briefing we had on what was going on with Russia and Ukraine. And it was interesting because, it was our intelligence community had pretty much everything right that has transpired. Despite all the denials of Russia and everything that was happening, everything they said turned out to be very true. This most recent, if it turns out to be true, it very likely could, given this, what the success of their intelligence has been. But, I think Vladimir Putin's not winning on this one. There's protests within Russia. Thousands of people have been jailed in Russia over those protests. I think the Ukrainian president has made himself a hero that we all wish we had in other countries as leaders, I think, in many ways, and shown, that the Ukrainian people are going to fight for their country. And, right now, Joe Biden, fortunately, has been very strong in saying we're not putting troops in there. We're not going to get involved that way. But the sanctions are something that is putting a squeeze really more on Putin and his oligarch friends that should have some influence on Vladimir Putin. So, I know this is far from being done and far from being written, but so far, what the intelligence community has told us has largely come true. And, I think it has been, it shows that Russia really has been extremely disingenuous at almost every step.
Yeah, it's astonishing. Before we pick up calls, anything that you wanted to share with anybody about what's going on, work that you're doing, things that we should be paying attention to politically?
I think the biggest thing for us is, the State of the Union, I think, really went well. You had someone who gave rational competence, which I think is what we need right now. We really are turning the corner, I believe, on COVID, and hopefully that means turning the corner on some of the inflationary pressures that we've seen. And if we can get to the point that we can talk about what we've done for the American people in the last couple of years, from the American Rescue Plan that put money in people's pockets and shots in people's arms, kids back into school safely, people into jobs, and the infrastructure bill that yesterday I was with the president in Wisconsin, in Superior, Wisconsin, the very top of the state. I think it was 10 degrees when we landed, or when we took off, and a lot of snow on the ground. But there's a bridge that connects Wisconsin and Minnesota that's $1 billion project that is part of that infrastructure bill. We've heard presidents and administrations talk about infrastructure, infrastructure day, infrastructure week. Well, now we have an infrastructure decade, as the president said. We actually have money and resources to do that. And I think, when people really get a chance to look at what Joe Biden has done and what the Democrats have done in the House and Senate, knowing we have much more to do with very tight margins, I think we've got a good case to make. Yeah, absolutely. And I thought it was a great speech. His struggle with his stutter notwithstanding, I thought it was absolutely brilliant. Yeah. So let's pick up some phone calls here. Clay in Vicksburg, Mississippi. You are on the air with Representative Pocan.
Hi, I hope my phone's working all right.
It sounds fine. It sounds fine, Clay.
Okay. I have an issue with these companies that if you have a service and they want to require you to opt out of something that they want to charge you for, that should be illegal.
For example?
Well, I occasionally will take a credit card payment for my business, and the credit card payment processors, I might do it once or twice a year, and they were providing statements on some website. I'd never seen a statement, and they claim that they had notified me that I was going to start getting charged for something unless I opted out, and I never saw anything like that.
I see. Thank you, Clay. Congressman?
All right,
Yeah, Clay, yeah, a lot of that I know it varies state by state. When I was a state legislator, I remember there were companies that sent you checks in the mail, and if you wound up cashing them, you subscribed to a service or something that, trust me, was far more costly than that check you received. And we were able to, in our state level, curtail practices like that. But, I know there's other opt-in, especially now online. And with apps, you sign up for an app and they're going to continue to bill you and you don't even know where to stop the billing. Those are all very valid concerns. And I think consumer issues in and of themselves are valid for both Congress, but especially many are controlled at the state level to deal with. So, reach out to your elected officials directly and share that story, because those are the ways that we can be informed of what businesses are doing out there.
These kind of consumer protection things are typically done at the state level, in other words.
Many of them. Although when you get to financial services, it's a little more iffy, so he might be onto something that it's a federal level issue.
Yeah, got it. Congressman Mark Pocan is with us. It's Middays with Mark Thursday edition here on the Thom Hartmann Program. Back with more of your calls for Congressman Pocan in just a moment.
This is the Thom Hartmann Program.
15 minutes past the hour here on the Thom Hartmann Program, the place where despair is not an option. We'll be back with your calls for Congressman Mark Pocan. And welcome back. David in Columbus, Ohio. You're on the air with Representative Pocan.
Hello, Representative. Thanks for doing this. It's a great service. I wondered why Biden didn't mention nuclear arms talks at the SALT treaty, and also limiting nuclear weapons. And the problem right now is that there's a lot of nuclear power plants in jeopardy, and we need to face facts on this.
You mean in Ukraine? Yeah. Okay. Congressman?
Yeah, well, I think, David, one thing, and it was interesting, we had a chance to talk to the president on the flight to Wisconsin yesterday. And, in fact, he said, his speechwriter told us, don't worry, this speech will be shorter today. And I don't think he gave a real long speech, but it was a little longer than perhaps they intended. I think it's always hard to know what gets covered and what doesn't, right? Because what's the right length of a speech? But your points are well taken as far as in the Ukraine, especially with Vladimir Putin, threatening all options are open, including nuclear. I think there's back channel conversations happening between militaries that perhaps are making sure that nothing may happen that shouldn't, because clearly nothing should happen in this area. But, I think there's a lot of things. People wanted to hear more about climate change. People wanted to hear more about a lot of subjects, but there's only so much you can do in one of those speeches. And I think he had to address two things. Three things, really. One, he had to address what was going on in Ukraine and Russia. And I think he did a great job on that and unified people on that in the beginning of the speech. Two, he had to address, I think, the issues of COVID and inflation, because those are the two biggest issues I think people are talking about right now that seem to stop us from having other conversations. And then three, he had to lay out an agenda, what he still wants to get done and what we need to do, and talk a little bit about what we've done. And again, that's a lot already in that amount of time. So I don't necessarily say, he didn't do it because this reason or that. It probably was more of a time issue. But you bring up a very valid point that I know is being looked at.
Richard in Palm Springs, you're on the air with Congressman Pocan.
Hello, Congressman. Thank you for being with us today.
Thank you.
I have a question about Congress's power, and it's kind of two parts. First of all, have you taken back the power to declare war? And why don't you take back or enforce your power to put people in jail that don't comply with subpoenas like you used to? That's all I have.
Thanks.
Thank you.
Yeah, so I think I can address the first one, hopefully a little bit easier. We recently sent a letter, a number of us, myself included, to the president saying, look, before you send any troops, if you're going to send any troops, you have to go to Congress, because that's what the Constitution says. And the thing is, he's not sending any troops, and I think he got that message. But what we haven't done yet is get rid of that very loose authorization to go into war from 9/11. And because of that, one could argue we give the president, any president, way too much latitude that goes around the Constitution. And that's something we still need to do. For a while, we had bipartisan support. We actually knocked it out of appropriations with almost a unanimous vote, and then Paul Ryan stopped it. And since then, we've had a few other issues, especially on the Republican side, in getting this done. To the second question, this is where I'm going to have to apologize already. I forgot what it was.
Is Congress going to start putting people in jail for ignoring subpoenas?
Gotcha. I think that the route is still trying to use the Department of Justice because that's the most direct route, but I understand the point the caller has. I wish we could enforce it in a much stronger way.
Thank you. We'll be back. It's Congressman Mark Pocan, pocan.house.gov. Tweet him at Rep. Mark Pocan is with us for the hour, taking your calls. We'll be right back in Missed my opening rant today? It's usually published over at HartmannReport.com, where you can read it and share it with your friends for free. Check it out, HartmannReport.com. An amazing story out of New Hampshire. The state legislature, this was after in Virginia, the new governor, Glenn Youngkin, who ran as I'm not Donald Trump, and then immediately put up a tip line for parents to turn in for parents to report their kids' teachers if they say something subversive. Now in New Hampshire, they've got a law that prohibits the dissemination of certain divisive concepts related to sex and race. Those divisive concepts being that people could be unconsciously racist. A conservative moms group has put up a $500 bounty in New Hampshire for the first person who can destroy the reputation and career of a teacher using this new law. So the teachers union sued the state of New Hampshire, and now the Republicans in New Hampshire, who control the state, are fighting back by putting up a new law that is going to require teachers to take a loyalty oath and ban any, quote, any negative account or representation of the founding and history of the U.S. It's nuts. There's a video about it over at ThomHartmann.com. Check it out. And welcome back. Congressman Mark Pocan taking your calls for the hour here on the Thom Hartmann Program. Middays with Mark, Thursday edition. Morris in Long Beach, California. You're on the air with Representative Pocan.
Good morning to everyone within the sound of my voice. Congressman, here we go again. We're going to talk about guns and butter. You know, Chuck Schumer was talking about he's going to put $6 billion out there, more money onto the budget because of what's taking place in Ukraine. Now, the president's talking about he want to put $10 billion more money into the budget because of what's going on in Ukraine. But y'all ain't got nothing for student loan debt. You got nothing to improve the quality of life for Americans that live in this country. And that previous caller who was talking about how come y'all ain't enforcing the laws, you know, Americans is watching everything. You got money for war, but you don't have no money for investment in this country. My question to you, Congressman, is if you're not anti-war, if you're not articulating anti-war, is there anybody to the left of you that's articulating anti-war, whether it be our soldiers or our money? And thank you very much.
I totally didn't understand the question, but I'll let me answer it generally because, there are a number of us. We actually have a caucus that Barbara Lee and I started, a Pentagon Spending Reduction Caucus. And, Morris, I actually agree with you. First of all, I don't think, the good news is we don't have troops going into Ukraine. We're not doing a no-fly zone, which would essentially, I think, in many ways be seen as starting some sort of world war if we did something like that. But I completely agree. I mean, we have plenty of money in the Pentagon budget that you can redirect some funds to deal with things that we're currently dealing with without having to ask for more money. And, this is the real problem. We have tried to cut the budget 10%, the Pentagon budget, which would be about $75 billion, give or take, depending on what year we've done it. And, we get about maybe half of the Democrats on board with that, but we don't get any Republicans, and we still have a problem even within the Democratic Party on it. And the problem is it's the military-industrial complex is very thorough. It's in every single district. It's a lot of jobs, and it often becomes a jobs issue rather than are we really looking at how we're spending our defense dollars? We spend more than the next 10 countries combined. And when you look at the fact that we don't even audit the Pentagon to make sure that we're spending our money wisely, there's many reasons why we should be very cautious, as you are, about how we're spending the Pentagon dollars. So there are plenty of us saying it. The good news is, at least in this case, we're not sending troops there, and we don't feel like there is an anti-war message that we have to have because we're not directly involved at this point with our own troops. However, we certainly want to have this end diplomatically. We're certainly pursuing that. We've done letters to the White House specifically about this. But when it comes to defense spending, there are a number of us who this is one of our top issues. I mean, if you did this to healthcare funding or education funding, you never had an audit, you never had any checks. Clearly people on the other side of the aisle especially would be going crazy on that. And when it comes to defense spending, it kind of becomes this issue that you can't question. In fact, with the bill we're probably going to have, Tom, hopefully next week, our omnibus, in order to keep the spending for things like education and healthcare, I think there's going to be a much bigger increase in defense spending because that's what is going to happen kind of out of the Senate process, different than what the House did in the appropriations process. And that's very unfortunate because it's really unchecked money and it's not spent wisely.
Yeah, it's a tragedy. Don in Pittsburgh, Kansas, you're on the air with Representative Pocan.
Representative Pocan, I'm originally a Michigan boy, and, there's a pipeline, Line 3 to Superior, Wisconsin, from the Athabascan tar sands, and then Line 5 that continues down through Michigan that carries 22.5 million gallons a day of petroleum products under the waters of Lake Huron at the beautiful Straits of Mackinac. And if it were to burst, it's 70 years old. It was designed to last 50 years. If that thing were to break, it wouldn't do the Wisconsin shoreline any good. I'm sure you know about it. Is there anything in the works to try and force this thing to be stopped? Gretchen Whitmer issued an executive order for them to shut it down because they're in violation of the easement. And they, of course, went to court, and it's being battled out in the courts now.
Yeah, Don, I think the real problem you're going to see, and this is just my gut telling me this, is you're going to see a bigger push, certainly from Republicans, but maybe even from some Democrats, on trying to do more domestic production of oil, given what's happening right now with Russia and Ukraine. Even though we get very little oil from Russia, it's still, all those companies that are affiliated are taking advantage of this, and they're continuing to gouge. And don't forget, we're still being gouged from a year ago when down in Texas, when because of Texas infrastructure, when weather got really cold and power went out and they had some issues, we saw gas prices go up. They've been held up artificially since then. And this is where I've said I wish the president would go aggressively after these oil companies and call them the frauds that they are. But in this particular case right now, I've been on calls, and I'm not saying anything that's classified here, but Republicans already are saying, well, now we have to reapprove the Keystone Pipeline. We have to, all these issues that have nothing to do directly with Russia and Ukraine. There is going to be a push, and you're going to see that industry push that. So while I agree that we should have concerns on the very pipelines that you're raising, I think we're also going to have concerns on just a very different direction.
Congressman Mark Pocan is with us for the hour. Former co-chair of the Congressional Progressive Caucus, a member of the Congressional Progressive Caucus representing Wisconsin and the Wisconsin 2nd District in the U.S. House of Representatives. Pocan.house.gov is his website, P-O-C-A-N. You can tweet him at Rep Mark Pocan. It's Middays with Mark, and we'll be right back with more of your calls for Congressman Pocan in just a moment.
You're listening to the Thom Hartmann Program. Call 202-808-9925.
It's the place where smart people get their news, the Thom Hartmann Program. We'll be back with Congressman Mark Pocan answering your questions in our National Progressive Townhall Meeting, Middays with Mark. Well, here we are 4/5 of the way through the week and still rolling. It's still moving along with our Free Speech TV Fund Drive. A special thanks to those of you who have called in or made your contributions, texted 44321 or called 877-378-8669 or gone to Free Speech TV to make your contributions. Thank you for those of you who have already done so. A number of people have answered the call. We're still behind. A little bit behind on our goals for the week and way behind on our goal for this pledge drive, which will run more than a week. But let's try to speed it up. Let's try to get a lot of this out of the way. Please call now, 877-378-8669, or text FSTV to 44321, and they'll bounce a link back to you that you can use to to make a contribution right away, and you'll know it's a safe link because it's a response to a text you sent out. There are a whole bunch of goodies that Free Speech TV is offering on this pledge drive. My favorite, of course, is the hidden history of Big Brother in America. I'll get to that in just a second because whenever I've got a brand new book out, we always toss it into these pledge drives, and I've been doing 2 a year now for 4 years. I guess this is the 7th book. So anyway, I'll get to that in a second. Here's the list. With a $20 gift, these are your one-time gifts. With a $20 gift, you have your choice of the Free Speech TV Clear sticker, or the Thom Hartmann University bumper sticker, or the Free Speech TV bumper sticker. With a $50 gift, there's the Free Speech TV Seed Bomb. Celebrate Earth Day every day. These are, you just toss them out in the lawn or put them in the some soft dirt, and boom, you're going to have some flowers. They're beautiful. With a $75 gift, you have your choice of the Free Speech TV hat or the Free Speech TV mug. With a $100 gift, Free Speech TV will plant a tree for you, or their contractor will plant a tree for you for reforestation, regreening the world, something that the world rather desperately needs right now. With a $120 gift, you can get your autographed copy of my newest book. It doesn't even come out for another week, but Free Speech TV, I know, got a couple of cases of them in advance from the publisher. The Hidden History of Big Brother, how the death of privacy and the rise of surveillance threaten us and our democracy. And it'll have a book plate in there that I have autographed for you. Or if you don't want the book, you can get with a $120 gift, you can get the Free Speech TV Solidarity t-shirt. With a $240 gift, you can join a bunch of us on a Free Speech TV meet and greet. These are always fun and interesting. Get a bunch of people together and talk about anything you want. It's not recorded. It's just, extemporaneous. And contemporaneous. So that's with a $240 gift. And with a $1,000 gift, you can come to Portland once, I don't know how long it's going to be, frankly. But I'm hoping within the next 6 months or so that everything is just settled down to the point where we can say, okay, cool, we can have people back in the studio. But that's with a $1,000 gift, the meet and greet, and I'll buy you lunch down the street as well. We'll work all that out. But the bottom line is that these pledge drives are what keeps this network on the air. There's not much else. There are some groups and some foundations and some wealthy individuals who put up matches, and we're hoping that there will be some of those throughout the next few weeks of the fund drive. But even with that, it really is you. You are who keeps this network on the air. And I think of Free Speech TV as family. I think of you as family. We have conversations every day on the radio. Sometimes people chastise me. Sometimes they put me in my place. Sometimes I learn from them. Occasionally I get a pat on the back. It's all good, but this is how a family functions. This Free Speech TV family. I don't know of anything like this that exists anyplace else. It's more personal and more intimate and more real in my experience than Facebook or other social media. I think we've built strong bonds, many of us, to each other over the years. So help support our family, huh? Become part of the Free Speech TV family. With a one-time gift, you can get one of these premiums, these free gifts, and or a sustaining gift. It's pretty painless to call and say, hey, I'd like that new book from Hartmann there, and here's my $120. And by the way, after you've done that, sign me up for $10 a month for the rest of the year, or for the next year, because I'd like to know that every month, a cup of coffee's worth of my money is going to help support Free Speech TV. I've always thought of money as a stand-in for energy, whether it's psychic or physical or whatever, and in many ways it is. And so I'm asking you to share your energy, your potential, or even kinetic energy with Free Speech TV, with all the rest of our family, to keep this show on the air, on this network, to keep this network on the air more generally, to Free Speech TV's programming, to build out their ability to do outreach and bring in new supporters, and also to build new programming. I mean, there's so much potential here with this network. So please call now, 877-378-8669. Free Speech TV needs your help, and they need it now. Thank you. Our 1-hour free podcast recaps our show, and it's available wherever fine podcasts are found. And we have the full 3-hour podcast available over at thomhartmann.com if you want to really support our program. And just a quick heads up, next week I've got 2 book signing events. I've got a new book out, The Hidden History of Big Brother in America, The Death of Privacy and the Rise of Surveillance Threaten Us and Our Democracy. On Tuesday, March 8th at 5 p.m. Pacific time, I'll be doing an hour-long event with Powell's Bookstore. You can register over at powells.com. It's a Zoom event. Both of these are Zoom events. They're both virtual. And then on Thursday of next week, March 10th, I'll be at Town Hall Seattle virtually at 6 p.m. Pacific time. townhallseattle.org is their website. Congressman Mark Pocan is with us for the hour, taking your calls. And Richard in Walton, West Virginia, you are on the air with Representative Pocan.
Good afternoon, sir. I've got one question. I guess you noticed how exasperated the president was when he asked, when are we going to finally get around to the $15 an hour minimum wage? And I have to ask you that. I voted Democrat, but next time I'm going to vote socialist because the Democratic Party is just not backing up the working class. I'm 79 years old, and I work just about every day putting groceries in people's cars when they order them online, and they hundreds of pounds of this stuff, and, you know, I barely keep going. But I need to work, and I need to make about $15 an hour. So let me ask you, when is the Democratic Party going to just finally say, we're going to go with this, we're going to get $15 an hour if it messes up our whole party?
Thank you, Richard.
Yeah, so first of all, Richard, let me say this, because I do think there's one flaw in what you're saying. We've passed that bill in the House. Every Democrat supported it, and I think 98%, I got to make sure I got my math right on how the Democratic Senate works, that a 50-50 Senate supports it as well. So if virtually everyone but maybe 1 or 2 Democrats out of 300 almost Democrats supports it, it's a little hard to blame the Democrats who want to get this done, who passed the bill out of the House. But part of our problem goes back to having the makeup we have in the Senate, 50-50, with a couple people that aren't always the best on all issues. Given that, I completely agree with you. You know, we need to do this. In fact, I think in some ways this is happening naturally right now with people still looking for workers, that wages are going up a little bit. I've said all along, I mean, that minimum wage is far out of whack with where reality is, but even more so now. And also, Richard, because of inflation, even more so now, you need probably even a greater wage than that $15 issue. So, you know, I think there are some things that are giving some pressures to wages. As the president said, let's lower costs and increase wages, not the other way around. And I think that's what, you know, some in the Republican Party are advocating for. But I do think it's unfair to say that Democrats aren't doing something when we actually passed the bill out of the Democratic House, and all but for the awful numbers in the Senate, I think this would be moving forward as well. You'll need 60 votes, and you don't have 60 Democrats.
Yeah, or even 50, sadly.
Yeah.
Pam in Chicago. Hey, Pam, you're on the air with Congressman Pocan.
Hi, Tom. Hi, Congressman. And let me just say, I know you made your mom proud. The 2 gifts we give parents is who we become and how we decide to make the world better. And I'm sure she saw that in you.
Well, thank you very much, Pam.
Yes, I just wanted to express that. I wanted to also ask about Ukraine, but before that, can I please say that we need Democratic elected officials. You all need to do something different with messaging. It has to be more specific. Biden's State of the Union, he should have went into more details about voter suppression and subversion. He should have talked about people shouldn't wait in line 5, 6, 7, 8 hours. I think that has to be more specific. And also, he should have mentioned January the 6th. I don't know why he didn't. So my question for you, Congressman, as it relates to Ukraine, because we're seeing them just be bombarded. They were asked, or there was the agreement for them to denuclearize. Had they kept their nuclear weapons, would we see Putin attacking them? And I'm just thinking, how can we ask, I guess, growing countries to do this, and they have no protection or no defense? And so I'm just asking, was that a big mistake? And where we are now, are we just going to wait till Russia and Putin totally just demolishes Ukraine, and then what?
Yeah. No, I mean, Pam, you raised good points. However, I do disagree on the nuclear issue. I don't think nuclear weapons are ever in anyone's best interest. If you use nuclear weapons, everyone is a loser. So I want to eliminate more and more nuclear weapons, including the U.S. arsenal of nuclear weapons. We don't need as many as we have. I don't think if they had nuclear weapons and they had the ability to use them, that would change much. In fact, it might then put those weapons in jeopardy, and it could be very much worse than it is. I think that right now, by doing the very targeted sanctions that we're doing our best not to hurt the Russian people as much as the Russian oligarchs, the friends of Vladimir Putin. I think from what we're hearing, we're having a good impact on that. Also, we knew all along this wasn't a cakewalk. The Ukrainian people are proud and they're fighting back, and we're able to, have the allies around the country supporting their efforts, and much to their credit. I think all the videos that have come out of there, people have looked at Ukraine with a very I think, positive light. And we need to make sure that someone like Vladimir Putin, or for that matter, Donald Trump, never can be the kind of strong man that they are. And, my real hope is that the Russian people will decide this is not in their interest. We watched the Russian stock market go down, and that is going to have some impact, unfortunately, for people. We saw the lack of availability for cash. But at the end of the day, this is Vladimir Putin's problem. I don't think there's an issue about if they had nuclear weapons, this wouldn't happen. And in fact, I would argue we need to get rid of even more nuclear weapons across the planet.
Kirk in Lakeland, Florida, listening to WMNF. You are on the air with Representative Pocan.
Congressman Pocan and Tom, thank you so much for taking my call and the time today. I'm frustrated. I live in Florida. What's happened is that I was just reading the legislation about the initiative in the House to try to kill solar incentives. Essentially, I'm also asking the question, to the previous caller's point, I was looking at another document from the military called the, it's not Strategic Defense Initiative, it's another term, but what it was a proposed military budget, and it made clear that the priorities would be COVID, Russia, and clean energy to have a safe infrastructure. And in my mind, this is my $90,000 investment on my home because I have, I have power bills that are going up. I invested in
Kirk, what's your question?
My question really is, what can be done on a more progressive level in this national policy to address these things?
Yeah, I think part of your problem is very uniquely, unfortunately, Kirk, you live in Florida and you've got a governor who wants to out Donald Trump, and be ready to run for president. I watched the embarrassing video of him with some university students where he belittled them for wearing masks. He's a punk. Really, that's the only thing I can call him. I knew him when he was in Congress. I thought he was a backbencher, and somehow this backbencher got lucky and is now governor of Florida. But between his "you can't say gay" bill, which is, dumb and discriminatory, to his taking away any action you're mentioning on solar credits, which is, again, stupid, but he's doing it for political, scoring points with the right base. You guys just got to change some of your political leaders, which means I think you've got some internal work to do in Florida. You are a swing state, but, Ron DeSantis is desperate to get on the national stage, and he's going to continue doing these completely idiotic moves if it helps him, and he doesn't give a damn about anyone who lives in Florida. So, at the federal level, I can tell you we are trying to keep all the tax credits for solar. That was part of what was in Build Back Better, and I think will still happen. We'll be able to continue those at the end of the day, but it's going to be a fight. We'll have trade-offs, unfortunately, with Republicans due to the numbers we have in the Senate. But, a lot of what you're talking about is fights you're going to have in your own state, and it's not just Florida. There's other states doing equally dumb things.
Malcolm in Bluebell, Pennsylvania. You're on the air with Representative Pocan.
Condolences, Mr. Pocan, on your mother.
Thank you.
Real quick, my issue with the January 6th committee, is this going to be a case much like the Mueller investigation where we're waiting for a report that if it's going to the Department of Justice, chances are it will be redacted before it's released to the public? And what can we expect from this report for January 6th? Because right now all I'm seeing is a lot of light jail sentences, and the guy that took Nancy Pelosi's lectern was just sentenced to 75 days, and chances are he'll be home in 30 for good behavior and time served. So what can we expect from this committee? Have a good day, then.
Thank you, Malcolm. And to the first part of your question, it will be very different than the Mueller report. The Mueller report, unfortunately, was left up to a Department of Justice under Donald Trump. And, unfortunately, Mr. Mueller, I think, made a number of bad calls to not put some of that information out. You're not going to have that. I don't think you're going to have the redactions and everything else. This is a committee that wants to get to the truth, and they're even talking about charges potentially against Donald Trump. So I think, one, you're going to see some real results out of it. They've done a lot of good, strong work. Unfortunately, some people have not showed up to testify, and I think that's a separate action issue, and anyone who defies the subpoena should be put in jail until they decide they're going to follow the subpoena. But I think you're going to have a real result out of this. Everyone I've talked to, I respect what they're saying, and I think they're going to deliver what you want.
Congressman Mark Pocan is with us for the hour. It's Middays with Mark Thursday edition here on the Thom Hartmann Program. Congressman Pocan taking your calls. His website, pocan.house.gov, pocan.house.gov. You can tweet him at Rep Mark Pocan. We'll be right back with more of your calls for Congressman Pocan.
You're listening to Thom Hartmann. Visit thomhartmann.com for audio and video archives.
Back with your calls on Middays with Mark. And welcome back. David in San Francisco, you're on the air with Representative Pocan.
Hello?
Hey, David.
Oh, thanks, Tom. Yeah, I didn't realize we were on there. Hey, since the congressman is part of the Progressive Caucus, I was going to suggest two different themes that he might have some success with. One is duty to care. Whenever a professional is hired, they have a duty to care for their clients. And when political officials are elected, they swear a loyalty oath, and that's a duty to care for the citizenry. And when it comes time to deal with the Republican Party, who not only don't seem to have a duty to care for the citizenry, but they're actually sabotaging our infrastructure and our safety nets, I personally find this argument of duty to care to be very useful. The other one is fake conservatives. A real conservative would not be a gambler. And the Republican Party is proving to be gamblers. They're taking bad advice about COVID. They're taking bad financial advice. In the case of that earlier caller talking about the minimum wage, anybody knows that if you want to fill up the Social Security coffers fast, you raise the minimum wage. And the fact that the Republican Party forgot or don't realize that in order to keep up with cost of living on an insurance policy, you have to maintain that the rate of fill goes in. You don't need to raise the percentage.
David, two great points. We're coming up on a break, so let's let Congressman Pocan respond, okay?
Sure.
Yeah. So, David, on the first point, I mean, the problem is the Republicans will claim their duty to serve is doing that because they'll lie about like they do right now about the very issues that are out there. You know, they lie about the attempts to take away people's ability to vote. They lie about things when they give tax breaks that 86% of the money goes to the top 1%. They saw them boo the president when he took them on that very issue during his speech this week. They're fine with lying, and that's the problem. If you don't have values or ethics or a moral compass enough, you can get away with anything. I understand what you're saying. In a perfect world, it would make sense. Secondly, again, the Republicans, again, it goes back to the line. They're fine with saying anything. I mean, they don't care if their issues are fact-based. They're more concerned about the talking points they have to put out there. Right now, they're trying to act like there's big crime everywhere. That's one of their fall issues. They're going to talk about the border and fentanyl, and they're going to talk about inflation. And even though we know Joe Biden has had nothing to do with inflation, it's completely driven by COVID and international global manufacturing and issues with everything reopening. They'll lie, cheat, and steal if they think it's going to help them in the election this November. So I understand in a perfect world, you're 100% right, David. Unfortunately, right now, especially post-Donald Trump, it's not a perfect world.
So many of their lies seem to be based in who's paying the bills, how they're getting money. Is there any serious effort happening in Congress to limit money in politics?
H.R. 1 clearly was, and we passed it out of the House twice now, 2 different sessions. The problem, again, is the rules in the Senate. We have to get around that filibuster if you're going to get some of these common sense things done.
Yeah, and it's nuts. It's absolutely nuts. Congressman Mark Pocan with us, taking your calls for the hour, Middays with Mark on the Thom Hartmann Program. You can find his website at pocan.house.gov. You can tweet him at @RepMarkPocan. And we will be back in just a moment on the other side of this break. Actually, 60 seconds back from now. Stick around. Hey, thanks so much for sharing our program and for reaching out to our stations and sponsors and letting them know that you're listening. It really means a lot to us. So how do you know which party has the most crooks in it? The Republicans are always saying, oh, those Democrats are soft on crime and, a lot of murders in Democrat-run cities. Well, for the record, first off, red states and red counties have a higher per capita murder rates than do blue states and blue counties. This is just a fact. But secondly, let's look at some of the administrations. I mean, the Obama administration had no criminal indictments. The Jimmy Carter administration had 1. The Bill Clinton administration had 2. But what about the Republican administrations? It was 16 for George W. Bush. It was 26 criminal indictments for Ronald Reagan. Richard Nixon's administration had 76 criminal indictments. And of course, the full-time professional rapist and grifter, Donald Trump, he had 215 criminal indictments. So who's really soft on crime? We got a video about it over at ThomHartmann.com. You can check it out. Welcome back, Congressman Mark Pocan, taking your calls for the hour. Anne Marie in Tucson, Arizona, you are on the air with Representative Pocan.
Good morning, Representative Pocan. I was reading last night article from Newsweek about the involvement of Eric Prince in Ukraine, and I wonder what you may think the importance of this connection is to Putin's desire for invasion there, when he claims that the quote-unquote Nazis are trying to establish themselves in Ukraine. Is it perhaps that he's recognizing this mercenary company based in the United States?
Yeah, well, Anne Marie, thanks for your question. First of all, I mean, I think it's rhetoric and rhetoric alone that Vladimir Putin's doing. We've gotten, a lot of intelligence coming into this, and, I think he's just going to say whatever he was going to say in order to have a justification for going in. And fortunately, we were able to expose him ahead of time, which makes, his argument all the less valid. However, you bring up a real good point. I mean, I am someone who thinks these companies that are essentially mercenaries out there are nothing but a pox on the entire system. And anytime you have these private contract military type firms involved, I think it's a bad thing. And unfortunately, all too often they find places like this because they can parasitically try to have some influence and have some power. And at the end of the day, it's not what Vladimir Putin was talking about. Vladimir Putin was just putting out lies to justify trying to go in and steal territory. But nonetheless, it should be a concern.
Tony in Chicago, you're on the air with Representative Pocan.
Hi, good afternoon. It was Eisenhower who warned about the military-industrial complex. The military-industrial complex is behind the expansion of NATO, which since World War II has doubled. George Bush in Germany swore to the Soviet Union, we won't move 1 inch east, but it's almost doubled. There's a cause and effect here. They have no concern about diplomacy, and in the result, they're causing this. Put yourself in Putin's shoes.
Yeah. Okay, Congressman.
Yeah, Tony, if I really thought this was the reason why Vladimir Putin was doing this, I would understand it. But I don't, unfortunately. I think he's just trying to bring back the band, so to speak, bringing back all the former parts of the Soviet Union. And it's more about that than anything else. Don't forget, this is a guy sitting on potentially up to $1 trillion who is not in any way the friend of democracy or friend of people of Russia or any other country. So, while all those things could possibly be true in different situations, in this situation, I think we've got a guy who's pretty much a tyrant, an oligarch, who clearly still has the respect of Donald Trump, doing a lot of bad things. And I'm going to remember that. I'm just glad that we're not sending troops in at this point. That's not something we should be doing. We don't want to escalate the situation. We do have to solve this diplomatically. And I hope that we'll be able to bring Putin to the table to do that by going after his rich oligarch friends. But I think that is a good strategy.
Yeah, and Putin also said last week in his speech that it wasn't about NATO. I mean, that's just a lie. He said it was because he doesn't think that Ukraine is actually a country. It's part of Russia, and he's simply reclaiming it.
Bringing back the band.
Yeah, exactly. Put the band back together. Will in Salem, Oregon. We're down to about a minute and a half here. You got a quick question for Congressman Pocan, Will?
Yeah, I do. Hi, Tom. Hi, Representative Pocan. Student loan debt. 50 million Americans, right? All can vote. Have student loan debt. Would it not be, from a purely political point of view, in the Democrats' best interest to cancel that student loan debt, to get those people out saying, yay, let's get more Democrats elected and save this coming midterm massacre? That's my question. Thank you.
Yeah, I agree with you, Will. In fact, I think we've requested that a number of times. One of the strategies right now for the Progressive Caucus, because of what's happening with Build Back Better, not moving as much as we needed to through the Senate to actually make it a law, we're recommending a lot of executive orders out of the White House. There's a lot of things that were in Build Back Better and other ideas that should happen. And if we're going to have no change on the filibuster, we've got to see, even if it's temporary action, because that's what executive order would ultimately be. And one of those is taking care of student loans.
Congressman, in our last 20, 30 seconds, what should we keep our eye on?
Well, I think next week, potentially, if we have this omnibus bill, we have to fund government. But I think, unfortunately, there's going to be some things we don't like as well because of how the Senate is going to come back with the bill for what we had passed out of the House. But it is important because it's got a lot of important funding under Democrats for things like housing and health care and other issues. We've got to get past that. And then we've got to really try to, as the president said, get some of his agenda still done. Those are all good items for the people. That's why the Progressive Caucus had his back on Build Back Better. We have to figure out how to get a number of things done, whether executive order or other ways.
There you go. Congressman Pocan, thanks so much for the great work you're doing in Congress and for coming on this program regularly to share it with everybody. A lot of your colleagues are not as courageous as you. Thank you.
Well, thank you so much, Tom. Your audience is always great.
I agree. Well, thank you, Congressman. We'll be back with more of our program. We're going to get into Tucker Carlson. And are the Republicans patriotic enough to support Biden? Well, I'll tell you about that in a break in just a moment.
You're listening to Thom Hartmann.
These companies support the Thom Hartmann Program. They are HelloFresh, the #1 meal kit delivery service. More info at HelloFresh.com, code TOM. The Hidden History of Big Brother in America, How the Death of Privacy and the Rise of Surveillance Threaten Us and Our Democracy by Thom Hartmann. More information at all book outlets. Wild Alaskan Company, 100% sustainable wild-caught seafood delivered right to your door. More info at wildalaskancompany.com/Tom. Cozy Earth, better sleep, better you. More info at cozyearth.com, promo code TOM. The latest views and opinions from U.S. politics and other fascinating subjects too, including cutting-edge science reports at hartmanreport.com. And Dinovite, a whole food supplement for your pet's immune system. More info at dinovite.com.
Well, here we are 4/5 of the way through the week and still rolling. It's still moving along with our Free Speech TV Fund Drive. A special thanks to those of you who have called in or made your contributions, texted 44321 or called 877-378-8669 or gone to Free Speech TV to make your contributions. Thank you for those of you who have already done so. A number of people have answered the call. We're still behind. A little bit behind on our goals for the week and way behind on our goal for this pledge drive, which will run more than a week. But let's try to speed it up, huh? Let's try to get a lot of this out of the way. Please call now, 877-378-8669, or text FSTV to 44321, and they'll bounce a link back to you that you can use to make a contribution right away, and you'll know it's a safe link because it's a response to a text you sent out. There are a whole bunch of goodies that Free Speech TV is offering on this pledge drive. My favorite, of course, is The Hidden History of Big Brother in America. I'll get to that in just a second, because whenever I've got a brand new book out, we always toss it into these pledge drives, and I've been doing 2 a year now for 4 years. I guess this is the 7th book. So anyway, I'll get to that in a second. Here's the list. With a $20 gift, these are your one-time gifts. With a $20 gift, you have your choice of the Free Speech TV Clear sticker, or the Thom Hartmann University bumper sticker, or the Free Speech TV bumper sticker. With a $50 gift, there's the Free Speech TV Seed Bomb. Celebrate Earth Day every day. These are, you just toss them out in the lawn or put them in the some soft dirt, and boom, you're going to have some flowers. They're beautiful. With a $75 gift, you have your choice of the Free Speech TV hat or the Free Speech TV mug. With a $100 gift, Free Speech TV will plant a tree for you, or their contractor will plant a tree for you for reforestation, regreening the world, something that the world rather desperately needs right now. With a $120 gift, you can get your autographed copy of my newest book. It doesn't even come out for another week, but Free Speech TV, I know, got a couple of cases of them in advance from the publisher. The Hidden History of Big Brother, How the Death of Privacy and the Rise of Surveillance Threaten Us and Our Democracy. And it'll have a book plate in there that I have autographed for you. Or if you don't want the book, you can get with a $120 gift, you can get the Free Speech TV Solidarity t-shirt. With a $240 gift, you can join a bunch of us on a Free Speech TV meet and greet. These are always fun and interesting. Get a bunch of people together and talk about anything you want. It's not recorded. It's just, extemporaneous. And contemporaneous. So that's with a $240 gift. And with a $1,000 gift, you can come to Portland once, I don't know how long it's going to be, frankly. But I'm hoping within the next 6 months or so that everything is just settled down to the point where we can say, okay, cool, we can have people back in the studio. But that's with a $1,000 gift, the meet and greet, and I'll buy you lunch down the street as well. We'll work all that out. But the bottom line is that these pledge drives are what keeps this network on the air. There's not much else. There are some groups and some foundations and some wealthy individuals who put up matches, and we're hoping that there will be some of those throughout the next few weeks of the fund drive. But even with that, it really is you. You are who keeps this network on the air. And I think of Free Speech TV as family. I think of you as family. We have conversations every day on the radio. Sometimes people chastise me. Sometimes they put me in my place. Sometimes I learn from them. Occasionally I get a pat on the back. It's all good, but this is how a family functions. This Free Speech TV family. I don't know of anything like this that exists anyplace else. It's more personal and more intimate and more real in my experience than Facebook or other social media. I think we've built strong bonds, many of us, to each other over the years. So help support our family, huh? Become part of the Free Speech TV family. With a one-time gift, you can get one of these premiums, these free gifts, and or a sustaining gift. It's pretty painless to call and say, hey, I'd like that new book from Hartmann there, and here's my $120. And by the way, after you've done that, sign me up for $10 a month for the rest of the year, or for the next year, because I'd like to know that every month, a cup of coffee's worth of my money is going to help support Free Speech TV. I've always thought of money as a stand-in for energy, whether it's psychic or physical or whatever, and in many ways it is. And so I'm asking you to share your energy, your potential, or even kinetic energy with Free Speech TV, with all the rest of our family, to keep this show on the air, on this network, to keep this network on the air more generally, to Free Speech TV's programming, to build out their ability to do outreach and bring in new supporters, and also to build new programming. I mean, there's so much potential here with this network. So please call now, 877-378-8669. Free Speech TV needs your help, and they need it now. Thank you.
This is the Thom Hartmann Program.
Welcome back to our second hour. Quick reminder, next week, next Tuesday, an hour-long event with Powell's Bookstore, powells.com. You can register for it. These are Zoom events. And Town Hall Seattle next Thursday, March 10th, townhallseattle.org. Pick one and or both if you want a lot of information about Big Brother and how Big Brother, what Big Brother is up to, both corporate and governmental. In this hour, I want to start off with my rant from HartmannReport.com today. It's titled, "Are Republicans Patriotic Enough to Support a Ban on Russian Oil Imports Without Turning It into a Hustle?" And that's the key. That's the key to the whole thing. You had a member of the Ukrainian parliament this morning, Oleksandra Ustinova, asked, how many Ukrainian deaths do Americans have to see on TV before we stop funding Putin by buying his oil? And I would add, how many Ukrainian deaths do we have to see on TV before Republicans stop using the Russian invasion of that country to promote the interests of American petro-billionaire oligarchs, American oligarchs? Now, just to put this in perspective, Germany's economic minister, a guy by the name of Robert Habeck, yesterday told Deutschlandfunk Radio that Germany has now positioned itself. Keep in mind, 40% of Germany's fossil fuel imports come from Russia. Germany has now positioned itself to decouple altogether from Russia's oil and gas imports. Just a couple of weeks ago, this was considered unthinkable. He said yesterday, quote, "We are prepared for that now. I can give the all clear for the current winter and summer." How's he going to do it? Well, he pointed out there's 3 nuclear power plants still running in Germany, and they'll just keep them running for a while. They were supposed to decommission them this year. And also, they've got old coal-fired power plants around the country that haven't been used in a number of years that they can bring back online. He did say, however, that we're going to have to buy more gas, we're going to have to buy more coal from other countries, and that the price of gasoline and home heating in Germany will go up. So here's the German government saying to their people, as part of the price of supporting Ukraine, you're going to see an increase in gas prices. Republicans, on the other hand, have a completely different perspective on this. And the reason why, of course, is because in Germany, their Supreme Court has never said that if fossil fuel billionaires want to own German politicians, that's just fine, that's free speech. In fact, the German Supreme Court has said the exact opposite. It is illegal for politicians in Germany to be owned by billionaires. Here in the United States, though, our Supreme Court, with Citizens United in 2010, fully legalized the ownership of politicians by billionaires and by industries. And so you see Kirsten Sinema owned by pharma. You see the entire Republican Party owned by big oil. You see Joe Manchin owned by big coal. It goes on and on and on. This is a felony in Germany. It is standard operating procedure in the United States because of the Supreme Court, because of these 5 radicals on the Supreme Court who pushed this through with Citizens United back, 12 years ago. So now, how are Republicans responding to Ukrainian members of Congress saying, hey, America, why are you buying oil from Russia? And by the way, just to give you a little backstory on this, prior to the Bush-Cheney administration, we were not buying oil from Russia in any consequential way. There's a graft from the U.S. Energy Information Administration, from our federal government, that I published today over at HartmannReport.com in this op-ed, in today's op-ed, titled U.S. Imports from Russia of Crude Oil. And prior to 1990, they were 0. There was a little spike there in the mid-90s where we were buying just little bits of Russian oil. But it took off like a bat out of hell in 2002 when George W. Bush and Dick Cheney were running the country, 2 oil CEOs. We went up to 400,000 barrels a day during the Bush-Cheney administration. Now, when they left office, it went down a little bit, but, we're still importing, on average, maybe 100,000 barrels a day. And so the Republicans are saying, if you're going to cut that off, replace it by reauthorizing the Keystone XL pipeline and giving licenses to drill to big oil companies for even more of the Gulf Coast, the California coast, the East Coast of the United States. Let us further despoil the environment. This is a complete BS argument. Even if Joe Biden said, okay, cool, we're going to stop buying Russian oil tomorrow, and we're going to make up for it by doing exactly what the Republicans are asking for, it would be 2, 3, 4, 5 years before any of that oil came online. It wouldn't affect gas prices. This Republican argument is completely disingenuous. It is vile, for lack of a better word. And at the same time, you got Republicans putting stickers on gas pumps all over the United States saying, oh, the price of gas, Joe Biden brought you that. Right. So what if Biden did say, okay, we're not going to buy any more oil? By the way, in the month of January, last month or the month before last, we imported no Russian oil. And this was in part because, part of it was probably caused by COVID, but most of it is because the Biden administration has been trying to wean us off foreign oil. Donald Trump just doubled down on foreign oil. But, in any case, let's say he does. What are Republicans going to say? Well, all we have to do to know how Republicans would respond to that is look how they responded to Jimmy Carter when you had the Arab oil embargo, or at least the echo of it. Jimmy Carter came out, gave a speech, and said, you know, we need to turn our thermostats down. We need to insulate our houses. We need to wear sweaters. And we need to drive more slowly. We're going to change the national speed limit from 65 to 55. And what did the Republicans say? They called his speech the malaise speech, even though he never used the word. They said he was weak. They said it was anti-American to turn down your thermostats. They attacked him viciously for trying to reduce our oil consumption. What makes you think they won't do the same thing if Joe Biden, cuts off imports of Russian oil? I mean, he's in a complete no-win situation. If he doesn't cut off the imports of Russian oil, he's going to be attacked by the Republicans for allowing, a few $1 million a day. Right now, I think it would be probably on the order of around $10 million a day, a few $1 million a day from the United States to go to Russia. If he does cut off the Russian oil, then they're going to point to that and say, see, he's jacking up the price of fossil fuels in the United States, and he's not giving us the pipeline, and he's not letting us drill more oil wells. I mean, the obvious and easy answer to this is, okay, we're going to cut off Russian oil, and we're going to replace it with a couple $1 billion to expand solar and wind. This isn't rocket science. Solar and wind are both cheaper than oil as energy sources now. Cheaper. They have been for a decade. But Republicans don't care about what's cheaper or not cheaper. They don't care about what's right or not right. They don't care about the future and fate of the environment. In fact, they deny global warming is even happening. Or if it is, as Trump said last week, it might just, move back your waterfront a little bit, or words to that effect. All they really care about is that the money from the fossil fuel billionaires and the big oil companies keeps flowing into the Republican Party. That's it. Period. So, expecting them to be honest about this, expecting them to do the right thing, expecting Republicans to say, yes, we're going to put America before our party is fantasy. It's absolute fantasy. And, betting that the GOP is going to do the right thing, not a bet that I'd want to take. It's 15 minutes past the hour. Tucker Carlson has gone off on an epic racist rant against Ketanji Brown Jackson. I'll get into that and be picking up your phone calls on the other side of this break. Stick around. 15 minutes past the hour.
This is the Thom Hartmann Program.
Ukraine, by the way, is inviting Russian mothers to come to Ukraine to recover their sons who are held as prisoners of war. Fascinating. And welcome back. Joshua in Tacoma, Washington. Hey, Joshua, what's on your mind today?
Hello, Thomas. Can I change subjects for a moment?
Yeah.
Wanted to talk about voter fraud.
Sure. Go for it.
The Republicans are doing all sorts of bills to combat voter fraud. I'm wondering why the Democrats don't. If I can give you a quick example. They tried to.
It was H.R. 1. It passed the House twice. It got blocked in the Senate by every single Republican, plus Kirsten Sinema and Joe Manchin.
Maybe if they branded it as, voter fraud.
Well, you had after that went down in flames, Joe Manchin negotiated with some Republicans, with Lisa Murkowski and Susan Collins, if I'm remembering correctly, negotiated the so-called Freedom to Vote Act, and then he wouldn't vote for that either. Well, actually, maybe he did. I guess it was Kirsten Sinema who wouldn't vote for that.
Right. Maybe it's just branding that they call that freedom to vote instead of like an anti-voter fraud bill.
Yeah. No, I get what you're saying, but they don't care. This is, words are not going to change the Republicans' minds. They're trying to rig elections to help them because they know that they're a shrinking minority.
Right. Well, Marjorie Taylor Greene came out and said that her husband had went to vote and found out that someone had voted for him already and had to go through a process so that he could vote. And to catch something like that, I mean, everybody's got to vote. And I think that would be the best way to eliminate voter fraud.
There is no voter fraud, Joshua.
Well,
I mean, you know, you've got maybe 100 people who got busted in the last election nationwide for voter fraud, and the majority of them were Republicans. You know, trying to vote for Trump.
I agree with that.
It's meaningless.
Voter fraud in air quotes, but if you promote it as stopping voter fraud, maybe you can get traction from the other side too. People that don't understand that there was no voter fraud. Perhaps, yeah.
Okay.
I'm just thinking if we made it. I mean, pay people to go vote, and if they don't vote, take the money back. If you can't make it a holiday, pay people $200, even $300 to go take the day off and vote.
You can't do that.
Can't do that?
No, you can't. We can't be paying people to vote. What Australia does is they have mandatory voting, and if you fail to vote, the first time you fail to vote, it's a small fine. My recollection is it's 25 Australian dollars. The second time you fail to vote, that fine goes up substantially. Again, it's been probably 6 years since we had a guy from Australia on explaining this whole thing. So please forgive my memory if my numbers are wrong. But my recollection is that the second time around it's like a $150 fine, and then the third time around it becomes like a $300 fine, and they just take it out of your. You know, they ding it against your taxes. So
right. Well, I was thinking if you didn't vote, they could take this back out of taxes, and it would get people to vote.
Yeah.
I mean, you're not paying to vote a certain way. Just
but you can't pay people to vote. But and by the way, the Supreme Court probably would not allow the Australian system in the United States because they have on multiple occasions affirmed that the First Amendment not only protects your right to speak, but also protects your right not to speak. And voting or not voting falls in that context of speaking or choosing not to speak. So that probably wouldn't work either. But keep thinking. I like the way you're thinking, Joshua. Keep it up. It's 20 minutes past the hour, or will be in a few seconds. This is the Thom Hartmann Program. I'll be back with you in 60 seconds. I got to tell you about Tucker Carlson's insane racist rant last night. And I'll pick up your phone calls right after this. Stick around. Share the Thom Hartmann Program with your friends. We're available on SiriusXM, Free Speech TV, Pacifica, commercial stations nationwide, YouTube, Twitter, Facebook, on the Thom Hartmann app, and you can even tell your smart speaker to listen to the Thom Hartmann Program. Hey, remember Andrew Wheeler? He was this coal lobbyist that Donald Trump plucked out of obscurity and put in charge of our nation's Environmental Protection Agency. He was the EPA administrator. He's the guy who said there was this new pesticide they wanted to bring to market. It causes permanent brain damage in children. He said, that's fine. Put it in the food supply. He's the guy who raised the levels of mercury and radiation to which children can be exposed. He's the guy who closed down the EPA's Office on Children's Health. He's the guy who shut down the EPA's office that provides scientific advice to Congress. He's the guy who stopped enforcing the Clean Water Rule so that the polluters could have a field day. He's the guy who told the oil and gas companies, hey, we're no problem on methane. We're no longer going to enforce the legal limits. And of course, he's the guy who ditched the rule that required cleaning up toxic coal ash. He is now the Secretary of Natural Resources for the state of Virginia. And he's got that job because Virginia just elected a Republican governor. There's a video about it over at thomhartmann.com. Check it out. Oh, man, what is Tucker Carlson doing? I mean, do you recall anybody when Amy Coney Barrett was nominated to the bench asking, we'd like to see her LSAT scores? Well, no, you just assume that if a person is going to be, is going to be in law, is going to go through law school, LSAT is the test you get to get into law school. That they're going to be smart enough to be in law school, and if they get out of law school and they get a job as a lawyer and then they get a job as a judge, that there's something going on in their brain that's respectable. I don't recall anybody asking to see Brett Kavanaugh's LSAT scores. I don't recall anybody asking to see John Gorsuch or Neil Gorsuch's LSAT scores. But now we've got a black woman nominated for the Supreme Court. So all of a sudden, Tucker Carlson, you know, the guy who says that there's this whole conspiracy to replace white people with black people, you know, a racist's racist. Tucker Carlson comes out and says, well, you know, I want to see her LSAT scores. I mean, this is amazing. She said, he says, appointing her as one of his gravest constitutional duties. So it might be time for Joe Biden to let us know what Ketanji Brown Jackson's LSAT score was. How did she do on the LSATs? Why won't you tell us that? Well, you know, A, probably nobody has asked, but B, this is pure petty racism. As Jim Sudo said, this is petty and offensive, but I also sense an attempt to divert attention from Tucker Carlson's open defense of Russia's position on Ukraine. Ida Bay Wells writes, and that's Nicole Hannah-Jones actually, writes, this is textbook racism, not even a dog whistle. Show clips of Tucker asking for LSATs of a white candidate. Outside of the ridiculous arguments that scores to get into law school are the measure of qualification, the presumption that black people are dumb is standard white supremacy. Dean Obeidallah, my friend and colleague on this here on Sirius XM, his show follows Michelangelo's After Mine. He says this is a classic white supremacist trope that there's no way a black person could have been intelligent enough to be accepted to a great school, so they got in through a quota, etc. Trump did the same thing with Obama's school records. Yes, that was the last time we heard about this. Where are his grades? That was Trump talking about Obama. Oh my God, black people trying to get into government? We need to find out if they're smart. Oh man. And then Dean Obeidallah goes on to say, Tucker and Trump are the grand wizards of today's GOP. Right. Christian Schneider says, I don't recall Trump questioning Amy Coney Barrett's mental acuity, puzzled as to why. Well, I'm not puzzled at all. I think it's fairly obvious why. Because Tucker Carlson believes that black people aren't smart enough to be on the Supreme Court. And this is just standard white supremacist BS and you know, has been for way too many years. And it's time for us to just call it out for what it was. Tucker Carlson's rant last night on Fox News was some of the most disgusting white supremacist crap I've ever seen. Picking up your phone calls here, Bill in Clifton, New Jersey. Hey, Bill, what's on your mind today?
Yeah, hey, and you don't need a law degree to serve on the Supreme Court.
That's true.
No requirement.
You're right. In fact, we have had non-lawyers on the Supreme Court in the past. It's been probably over 150 years, but yes, you're right.
Right. And before I keep forgetting every time I call you, if you could do a piece on Benjamin Franklin and the Great Potato Banquet, that would be great.
I don't know what you're talking about. I'll have to look it up.
Well, it relates very well to your conversation with Dick Gregory about democracy.
Okay.
It's a pretty fascinating story about the potato and how it was introduced to Europe.
Okay. I know it was an American, along with tomatoes, you know, the nightshade family basically came out of here, and tobacco.
Right. And because they're members of the nightshade family, people wouldn't eat them and everything. And the guy who started the whole thing was a pharmacist, French pharmacist, who was captured by the Germans during the 7 Years' War and was forced to eat nothing but potatoes.
Huh. And you know, it was Jefferson who popularized tomatoes. Nobody was willing to eat those, too. Anyhow, we're down to 30 seconds now. You got a quick one, Bill?
Okay. Yeah. The third thing that you mentioned yesterday about the tax exemptions that Reagan took away was all interest payments on personal debts and everything else.
You're right. You used to be able to deduct your interest payments on your credit card.
Exactly.
And your car loan.
And they should bring that back. You know, student debt, you're not allowed to declare more than $2,500 a year on the interest to take off. And what Republican be against tax breaks? So they should bring those three tax breaks, especially since two of them are for insurance.
Yeah,
Social Security and
you're absolutely right, Bill. I completely agree. And you know, another example of Ronald Reagan dropping taxes on very rich people and then screwing working class people. one of 18 different increases in taxes on average people that he passed. Bill, thanks for the call.
You're listening to the Thom Hartmann Program. Call 202-808-9925.
Back with more of the news of the day and your calls on the other side of this break. Well, here we are 4/5 of the way through the week and still rolling. It's still moving along with our Free Speech TV Fund Drive. A special thanks to those of you who have called in or made your contributions, texted 44321 or called 877-378-8669 or gone to Free Speech TV to make your contributions. Thank you for those of you who have already done so. A number of people have answered the call. We're still behind. A little bit behind on our goals for the week and way behind on our goal for this pledge drive, which will run more than a week. But let's try to speed it up, huh? Let's try to get a lot of this out of the way. Please call now, 877-378-8669, or text FSTV to 44321, and they'll bounce a link back to you that you can use to make a contribution right away, and you'll know it's a safe link because it's a response to a text you sent out. There are a whole bunch of goodies that Free Speech TV is offering on this pledge drive. My favorite, of course, is The Hidden History of Big Brother in America. I'll get to that in just a second because whenever I've got a brand new book out, we always toss it into these pledge drives, and I've been doing 2 a year now for 4 years. I guess this is the 7th book. So anyway, I'll get to that in a second. Here's the list. With a $20 gift, these are your one-time gifts. With a $20 gift, you have your choice of the Free Speech TV Clear sticker, or the Thom Hartmann University bumper sticker, or the Free Speech TV bumper sticker. With a $50 gift, there's the Free Speech TV Seed Bomb. Celebrate Earth Day every day. These are, you just toss them out in the lawn or put them in the some soft dirt, and boom, you're going to have some flowers. They're beautiful. With a $75 gift, you have your choice of the Free Speech TV hat or the Free Speech TV mug. With a $100 gift, Free Speech TV will plant a tree for you, or their contractor will plant a tree for you for reforestation, regreening the world, something that the world rather desperately needs right now. With a $120 gift, you can get your autographed copy of my newest book. It doesn't even come out for another week, but Free Speech TV, I know, got a couple of cases of them in advance from the publisher. The Hidden History of Big Brother, how the death of privacy and the rise of surveillance threaten us and our democracy. And it'll have a book plate in there that I have autographed for you. Or if you don't want the book, you can get with a $120 gift, you can get the Free Speech TV Solidarity t-shirt. With a $240 gift, you can join a bunch of us on a Free Speech TV meet and greet. These are always fun and interesting. Get a bunch of people together and talk about anything you want. It's not recorded. It's just, extemporaneous. And contemporaneous. So that's with a $240 gift. And with a $1,000 gift, you can come to Portland once, I don't know how long it's going to be, frankly. But I'm hoping within the next 6 months or so that everything is just settled down to the point where we can say, okay, cool, we can have people back in the studio. But that's with a $1,000 gift, the meet and greet, and I'll buy you lunch down the street as well. We'll work all that out. But the bottom line is that these pledge drives are what keeps this network on the air. There's not much else. There are some groups and some foundations and some wealthy individuals who put up matches, and we're hoping that there will be some of those throughout the next few weeks of the fund drive. But even with that, it really is you. You are who keeps this network on the air. And I think of Free Speech TV as family. I think of you as family. We have conversations every day on the radio. Sometimes people chastise me. Sometimes they put me in my place. Sometimes I learn from them. Occasionally I get a pat on the back. It's all good, but this is how a family functions. This Free Speech TV family. I don't know of anything like this that exists anyplace else. It's more personal and more intimate and more real in my experience than Facebook or other social media. I think we've built strong bonds, many of us, to each other over the years. So help support our family, huh? Become part of the Free Speech TV family. With a one-time gift, you can get one of these premiums, these free gifts, and or a sustaining gift. It's pretty painless to call and say, hey, I'd like that new book from Hartmann there, and here's my $120. And by the way, after you've done that, sign me up for $10 a month for the rest of the year, or for the next year, because I'd like to know that every month, a cup of coffee's worth of my money is going to help support Free Speech TV. I've always thought of money as a stand-in for energy, whether it's psychic or physical or whatever, and in many ways it is. And so I'm asking you to share your energy, your potential, or even kinetic energy with Free Speech TV, with all the rest of our family, to keep this show on the air, on this network, to keep this network on the air more generally, to Free Speech TV's programming, to build out their ability to do outreach and bring in new supporters, and also to build new programming. I mean, there's so much potential here with this network. So please call now, 877-378-8669. Free Speech TV needs your help, and they need it now. Thank you. Hey, I've got a new book out. It's called The Hidden History of Big Brother in America, How the Death of Privacy and the Rise of Surveillance Threaten Us and Our Democracy. Available wherever you find fine books. The New York Times has put together just an amazing graphic where they took all the record temperatures from last year, from 2021, and put the red ones being hot and blue ones being cold, put them as little dots on a map of the United States. And it sure looks to me like what we're seeing is the collapse of the jet stream. If you watch weather shows on TV and things like that, what you see is, some very odd. Well, we saw this, for example, with that cold snap last a year ago, February, where the jet stream just kind of drooled all the way down, carried Arctic air all the way down into, southern Texas and northern Mexico, froze Texas up, shut down their power systems and things like that. And it's blocking the movement of air here in the Pacific Northwest, and thus we're getting these massive heat waves. I think that we all need to keep an eye on this. I've got a video about it over at thomhartmann.com. You can check it out there. And welcome back. Picking up your phone calls here. Lou in Pueblo, Colorado. Hey, Lou, what's on your mind today?
Hey, Tom. Just wanted to suggest we're expressing things incorrectly. Every time, at least in the U.S. system, when a tax is cut, someone else has to pay it. So we should never talk about tax cuts for the rich. What we should talk about is wealth transfer from the poor to the rich, or really from the working class to the rich. Should never call it a tax cut. They can gain a lot by telling people what exactly is happening. We're giving your money to rich people.
Yeah. That's a good point, changing our language. It's an excellent point. Thank you. Thank you very much for that call, Lou. John in Hammond, Indiana. Hey, John, what's up?
Hey, Tom. Hey, I want to settle down for a second. President Bill Clinton, I wanted to make a comment about him and the masterful way that he dealt with the breakup of the former Yugoslavia back in the 1990s. Mm-hmm. Do you recall the moral high ground that we had then? That's when Serbia was doing ethnic cleansing of the Kosovo folks.
I remember it well. We also watched the bombing of Sarajevo for days before Clinton acted. I mean, it was he really got pushed into a corner by American public opinion. And I'm wondering if we're going to see a repeat of that, and if we do, if that might move us closer to the possibility of war with Russia, which is not that was not on the table in the case of Serbia and Sarajevo and Croatia.
No, and the other thing is, Tom, if you recall, that's before U.S. unilateralism during the Bush and Cheney administration.
Right.
So, in other words,
although we've been pretty unilateral for 200 years, but back to you.
Well, agreed. But what I mean is that after we invaded Iraq and Afghanistan, we kind of opened the floodgates for unilateralism. So it's like everybody's jumping on board.
Yeah.
But the thing is that the whole point of the call is the notion of ethnic cleansing. And it's something we need to be concerned about, because that is, in my opinion, what has been happening in the Donbass. The nationalists didn't like the election in Kiev. There were ones that voted for a Russian person and ones that voted for a Ukrainian nationalist. The Ukrainian nationalists won, and ultimately there became an ethnic conflict on this border region of Donbass, and they tried ethnically cleansing. In my opinion, that was ethnic cleansing. So in one respect, the Russians have the moral high ground, is what I'm saying. And this is what happens when you impose unilateralism. We should have gotten NATO and Russia involved when this all started happening, and we should have said, hey, listen, how are we going to deal with this in a peaceful way? It was never done, and Hillary Clinton opened the floodgates when she was Secretary of State to sending weapons. And that changed the balance of power, and we're dealing with it now. That's exactly what happened.
Yeah, although I'd say, the biggest thing that we're dealing with right now is that, Putin is trying to get the band back together, as Congressman Pocan said. He's trying to resurrect the old Soviet Union, and and I think once he takes down Ukraine, I don't think he's going to stop there. But John, good points all. Thank you very much. James in Winston-Salem, North Carolina. Hey, James, what's on your mind today?
Hey, Tom. I was just curious what you thought about this. The way Joe Biden, in my opinion, is handling this Supreme Court pick is racist, based on the fact that he says, I'm going to put a black woman in there regardless of what. So does that discriminate against white women, Asian women, India, Native American women? And what if they're more qualified and deserve the job more, but they're not put in that position because they're not black? That is the definition of discrimination. So he says he's opposed to it, but that's what he's doing.
Well, A, I would say that it's the opposite of that, and I'll get to that in a second. And B, suggesting that there are no black women who are as qualified as anybody else to be on the Supreme Court, respectfully, James, I would say is racist itself. But here's the question.
I'm not saying that.
Let me just give you a hypothetical, James. Let's say that, your neighbors don't like you for whatever reason, the way that you cut your hair or the way that you talk or whatever. And so, for the last couple of years, periodically, they've been coming over and smashing your windows and trying to set fire to your garage and just damaging your house. And they've been doing that for a couple of years. And finally, your neighbors all get together. You all have a meeting, and everybody decides, we're going to put this behind us. And in fact, we're going to go over and we're going to paint James's house because, it's so badly damaged from all the times that we hit it with hammers and tried to set it on fire. Is that discrimination against all your neighbors because they have decided they're going to repair a harm that they committed in the past?
That has nothing to do with what I just said.
It's the exact same thing, James. You've got 200 years in the United States of black people being excluded from the legal profession, being excluded from the courts, being excluded from the Supreme Court, and to say we're gonna fix that. We're going to do something about that. That is not racism. That is repairing past wrongs.
Tom, is Clarence Thomas black or white?
Clarence Thomas is not a woman.
He's a black person, though, and he's a great man.
I get it. You want to make it about race, but
Tom, we're talking about the definition for discrimination means you discriminate against somebody for a position, but strictly based on their race, and that's exactly what he's doing.
He is.
You can't say otherwise.
He is fixing past wrongs, James.
No, he's not, sir. That's discrimination.
Well, you can call it that if you want, and you can call it that if you want, but I'm not going to call it that, James.
Look up.
Okay, Silvio in Massapequa, New York. I'm sure I'm mangling that, Silvio. What's on your mind today?
Well, I just wanted to mention this, that Putin does not know his history. I mean, every school child in Russia learned about the Kronstadt Naval Base. I don't know if you are familiar with that.
I'm
but
not.
In 1917, the sailors in the Russian Navy mutinied. And they took over the naval base. They opened fire on the Winter Palace in St. Petersburg. They overthrew the provisional government, and they brought the communists, or the Soviets at the time, to power.
Was this the kickoff of the Bolshevik Revolution?
Yes.
Okay.
That's exactly.
I don't know a lot about that
And-
that time in Soviet history, but I'm somewhat familiar with it. So what's your point, Sylvia?
Well, the point is that I'm hearing rumblings on the news about Russian soldiers simply surrendering,
right?
Because they didn't want to fight, and they feel that the situation is all wrong. And basically, that's how it started there at that naval base.
Oh, interesting.
And if Putin knows his history, it can happen again.
I think that the biggest threat to Putin does not come from us or from Ukraine. I think it comes from within his own country, and he is desperately trying to prevent that from happening right now. And this is why he's arrested over 6,000 Russians. And now you've got a law in the Duma, in the Russian parliament, that was proposed this morning, apparently, by a Russian member of parliament, that every protester who gets arrested is immediately conscripted into the military and sent to the front lines in Ukraine. And, which we'll see if it passes the Russian parliament. It probably will, whether it's practical or not. But I think all of this is just, to your point, Silvio, that he is now way out on a ledge. And if he can't figure out a way to spin this thing into a victory, I mean, he might take down Ukraine. He might kill 100,000 or 200,000 civilians. He might end up owning that country, and the rest of the world might just have to swallow that. But what's that going to do to him in Russia? I particularly in this internet age. I mean, during the Soviet era, Russians and other people in the Soviet states were getting their information via shortwave radio. I used to listen to Voice of America broadcasts and other broadcasts. Deutsche Welle, I loved listening to. Now it's all on the internet, and Putin's trying to control that. They're trying to throttle Facebook right now. You have, I shared the story yesterday of the Russian police visiting the homes and apartments of people who have posted, pro-Ukraine or anti-war sentiments on social media. So, they're looking at this stuff.
Well,
but I don't think he can stop.
I have one more.
I think it's going to eat him alive.
I just have one more point.
Yeah, go for it.
Right now, I feel that somewhere in the back room in Russia, there's a half dozen colonels getting together and saying, we have to do something.
I agree.
And that's how these things begin.
I think that's why Putin is sitting 30 feet away from people on that table. If it was about COVID, he'd be sitting 10 feet away from them. He's sitting 30 feet away from them because that's the distance where you're safe from a suicide vest. This is, Putin knows well European history. He knows that Hitler's top commanders tried to assassinate Hitler. They put a bomb under the table during one of their meetings, and it killed a couple of people. It was just a fluke that it didn't kill Hitler. And Putin doesn't want the same thing to happen to him, in my opinion. I think that's what's going on. Thanks for the call. Daryl in Norfolk, Nebraska. Hey, Daryl, what's on your mind today?
As far as President Biden's nominee,
yeah,
I think she should simply take her scores and throw them right in Tucker Carlson's face.
Yeah.
She's obviously an intelligent woman.
Yes, she is.
That being said, nothing in this confirmation should be questioned. Nothing could be worse than what they did to Brett Kavanaugh. They accused him of being a criminal rapist.
Yeah, and it looks like maybe he was. I mean, now we've found that the FBI had over 20 other people who came forward and were willing to testify in public, and the Trump administration blocked them from even getting through to the committee. Look it up, Gerald. Look it up. There were multiple women who were accusing Brett Kavanaugh of the same thing, and it never made it into the hearings. So, I think Brett Kavanaugh got a huge pass. Only 1% of his papers ever came out. Brett Kavanaugh was one of the advisors to George W. Bush about how it wasn't a war crime to torture people. I mean, Brett Kavanaugh was like in the middle of a whole lot of really skeezy stuff. And we were not allowed to see any of that. Less than 1% of his hundreds of thousands of papers from when he was in the White House with George W. Bush. We'll be right back. It's 46 minutes past the hour.
You're listening to Thom Hartmann. Visit ThomHartmann.com for audio and video archives.
Poor beer bong Brett. Such a sad thing. We'll be back with your calls right after this. And welcome back. Anna in Tustin, California. Hey, Anna, what's on your mind today?
Good morning, Tom. For Valentine's Day, I asked for your book, Cracking the Code. And I read it cover to cover, and I'm educating myself on how to fight for the midterm elections, and I found your book very, very helpful.
Good.
So thank you for that. I love that. But pointedly, I wanted to speak about those little stickers that you find at the gas station that says, he did that, and some of your callers have been calling in and talking about Sharpie and all that, and all those are good ideas. And I kept thinking, well, what else could we do? What else could we do? Because when I see them, I rip them off. I just tear them off, and I just put them next to my the window buttons in the door of the car. Right. And I thought, well, here's an idea, and I wanted to tell you this so that maybe one of your listeners who has the technical capability can help make this happen. But I thought, what would happen if instead of tearing it off, I had a stack of little QR code stickers, and the QR code square would be just big enough to cover Biden's face, and the text next to the QR sticker would say, sick of high gas prices, want to know why? And then everybody has the QR capability now, the pandemic, that was one of the side effects, is now QR codes are more in use than they were before the pandemic. Yeah, so now I think more people might be curious. They've downloaded the app, they're using it to look at menus. So if they put the QR code in their phone, and it pops up to a website with a splash page, and in simple language, 6th grade reading level, because hopefully this will penetrate the mega mind. So bullet points of why the gas prices are, price gouging, Texas, all the things that you talk about regularly and that Democrats know, and we're not talking about it enough. So what if that happens? Because, I'm worried about the midterms just being a repudiation of people, of Biden, just because they're sick of paying 50 cents more for a burrito. I'm sick of paying more for a burrito. I'm sick of paying more for gas, so I will allow an autocracy to happen in America. I mean, that's crazy, right? That's stupid, cutting off your nose. So anyway, it's the little things we have to be mindful of, I think. And so I thought that's one huge sticking point with the voters is gas prices. So that's one way to do that.
Yeah, it is. If I could just very quickly, what you're asking people to do is jump through a bunch of hoops. Probably fewer than 0.5% of people who see that would do the QR code.
Exactly.
But,
exactly.
But what if you covered Biden's picture with a picture of Putin? Or what if you just scratched out the word he with a Sharpie and wrote Putin or wrote the GOP?
Oh, no, I'm not saying instead of, and. That's another tactic we have.
Got it.
And just, I'm not saying, I just said those were all great ideas, and I will carry a Sharpie and do that. But because it takes a few more hoops for us to go through. And you're right, it's like doing a direct mailer, like 3% of people will respond. But those people, if they read that and they read about the Texas, the winter oil, gas, the electrical grid crisis in Texas, and that was due to Republican governorship in Texas for years and years.
Got it. Anna, we're down to 10 seconds. You had another point you wanted to make real quick?
Oh, yeah, for want of a nail, the war was lost. And also create a meme on Instagram that will direct people to that page. And beyond that, not just the bullet points, but links to in-depth articles for those who are more academically minded and want to read more. And
a great idea.
You can connect me. Anybody who wants to do the QR code and the technical part, hook me up with Joyce. They can get my number, and I'll write the text. I'm a writer.
Okay.
So, okay.
Alrighty.
Let's do it.
Hang on just a second. I'll connect you to Joyce. I'll put you on hold so Joyce can take your information. Anna, thank you very much. We'll be right back. Change starts with you. You can be calling your Democratic or Republican representatives to let them know what you think by calling 202-224-3121. It's the Capitol switchboard. It'll get you right through to them. So if you want to know what the Republicans are for, you'll recall, President Biden recently in his one-year anniversary of becoming president speech said that, who would have imagined that all they were in favor of doing was just obstructing anything I'm doing. And then he went on to say, what are the Republicans for? What does Mitch McConnell stand for? Chris Sununu, the governor of New Hampshire, actually went and talked with a number of Republican senators when he was thinking about running for the Senate, asked them, what are you guys doing? And they said, we're just here basically obstructing Biden. That's all we're doing. And Sununu said, screw that, I'm not going to run for the Senate then. He said they were all, for the most part, content with the speed at which they weren't doing anything. It bothered me that they were okay with that. So then, Mitch McConnell got asked by an NBC, Leanne Caldwell at NBC, what are you guys going to do if you get elected? And McConnell said, I'll tell you after the election. This is nuts. We got a video about it over at thomhartmann.com. Check it out. "52 minutes past the hour. Welcome back. And Jim in Voorheesville, New York. Hey, Jim, what's on your mind today?
Hey, Tom. I have a question that I wanted to ask the congressman but couldn't get through in time. I was wondering why the UN hasn't sent in peacekeeping forces in Ukraine, or what country would have to make that request. Do you know anything about that?
I don't, Jim, and it's a reasonably good question. My recollection, and I'm reluctant to even say this because I might be so wrong, but my recollection is that peacekeeping forces typically came in after conflicts. They came in to keep the peace once the peace was established, rather than to be partisans in a war. I mean, we've got an actual war of aggression, Russia attacking Ukraine. And peacekeeping forces are broadly unarmed. So I just don't think probably it would be appropriate or even consistent with the idea of the peacekeeping forces. But I can't say for sure. I'm not an expert on the UN, so sorry.
Yeah, neither am I. That's why
Okay.
I asked you.
But it's a great question,
But I
Jim.
was wondering, the Putin regime is committing war crimes against civilian populations.
That's clear, yes.
And wouldn't that come under some kind of umbrella protection from the UN?
No, because the UN is not a military organization. What it does come under is the international treaties on war crimes, and the International Court, the International Criminal Court in The Hague, convened this morning to hear evidence against Putin for war crimes. So we'll see how that plays out. But, it's a start. Jim, thanks for the call. David in North Miami Beach, Florida. Hey, David, what's on your mind today?
Hey, y'all.
Hey.
Yes. All these conservatives that want to keep the price of fuel down without offsetting the subsidies, I guess they don't remember the movie Syriana, where everyone's worried about we can't let oil jump to $200 a barrel, or even the TV episode Nuts to War, where they use macadamia nuts as a stand-in for oil, where they have to send in their soldiers or else these nuts will cost an extra 50 cents a jar. These fossil fuel worshipers, I don't know if they studied single-entry bookkeeping and accounting. Me, I learned double entry.
Right. So did everybody else, right?
Right. So I just wish that they would look a little closer at their invisible hand of the market. Are we going to sacrifice Ukrainian lives to keep Putin happy?
Well, and now there is a $10 billion piece of legislation that the Democrats have gotten through the House, and it's before the Senate right now, for Ukraine aid. And Mitch McConnell and John Kennedy and I'd have to go back and hang on just a second. I'll give you the names of a whole bunch of Republican senators are blocking it. Mitch McConnell, Bill Cassidy, that was the one whose name I was missing. Louisiana, Bill Cassidy, Louisiana, John Kennedy, and Mitch McConnell are blocking this legislation. Oh, and Richard Shelby from Alabama. Surprise, surprise. Perfect. They do not want the money going to Ukraine, apparently, and so, here we are.
Remember, the world has a $6 trillion fossil fuel subsidy, enough money to give almost $1,000 to every person, certainly to every adult.
Yeah. No,
so
it's
good work.
Thank you, David. Yeah, now what these guys are up to is obscene. It's just absolutely obscene. There's a great diary about this, by the way, over at dailycoz.com right now. The title of it is Biden's $10 billion request for Ukraine aid gets complicated by Republican budget games, by Joan McCarter. And it is absolutely spot on. The Republicans are, as we speak, those Republicans that I just named, are working to block U.S. aid to Ukraine. Think about that for a minute. It's mind-boggling. Okay, on the other side of this break, we're going to do a 30-minute deep dive, Conversations with Great Minds with Kelly Weill about flat earthers and conspiracy theorists. I think you'll find this fascinating, and it ties into Ukraine.
You're listening to Thom Hartmann.
These companies support the Thom Hartmann Program. They are HelloFresh, the #1 meal kit delivery service. More info at HelloFresh.com, code TOM. The Hidden History of Big Brother in America, How the Death of Privacy and the Rise of Surveillance Threaten Us and Our Democracy by Thom Hartmann. More information at all book outlets. Wild Alaskan Company, 100% sustainable wild-caught seafood delivered right to your door. More info at wildalaskancompany.com/Tom. Cozy Earth, better sleep, better you. More info at cozyearth.com, promo code TOM. The latest views and opinions from U.S. politics and other fascinating subjects too, including cutting-edge science reports at HartmanReport.com. And Dinovite, a whole food supplement for your pet's immune system. More info at Dinovite.com.
We say fight back!
Well, here we are 4/5 of the way through the week and still rolling. It's still moving along with our Free Speech TV Fund Drive. A special thanks to those of you who have called in or made your contributions, texted 44321 or called 877-378-8669 or gone to Free Speech TV to make your contributions. Thank you for those of you who have already done so. A number of people have answered the call. We're still behind. A little bit behind on our goals for the week and way behind on our goal for this pledge drive, which will run more than a week. But let's try to speed it up, huh? Let's try to get a lot of this out of the way. Please call now, 877-378-8669, or text FSTV to 44321, and they'll bounce a link back to you that you can use to make a contribution right away, and you'll know it's a safe link because it's a response to a text you sent out. There are a whole bunch of goodies that Free Speech TV is offering on this pledge drive. My favorite, of course, is The Hidden History of Big Brother in America. I'll get to that in just a second because whenever I've got a brand new book out, we always toss it into these pledge drives, and I've been doing 2 a year now for 4 years. I guess this is the 7th book. So anyway, I'll get to that in a second. Here's the list. With a $20 gift, these are your one-time gifts. With a $20 gift, you have your choice of the Free Speech TV Clear sticker, or the Thom Hartmann University bumper sticker, or the Free Speech TV bumper sticker. With a $50 gift, there's the Free Speech TV Seed Bomb. Celebrate Earth Day every day. These are, you just toss them out in the lawn or put them in the some soft dirt, and boom, you're going to have some flowers. They're beautiful. With a $75 gift, you have your choice of the Free Speech TV hat or the Free Speech TV mug. With a $100 gift, Free Speech TV will plant a tree for you, or their contractor will plant a tree for you for reforestation, regreening the world, something that the world rather desperately needs right now. With a $120 gift, you can get your autographed copy of my newest book. It doesn't even come out for another week, but Free Speech TV, I know, got a couple of cases of them in advance from the publisher. The Hidden History of Big Brother, How the Death of Privacy and the Rise of Surveillance Threaten Us and Our Democracy. And it'll have a book plate in there that I have autographed for you. Or if you don't want the book, you can get with a $120 gift, you can get the Free Speech TV Solidarity t-shirt. With a $240 gift, you can join a bunch of us on a Free Speech TV meet and greet. These are always fun and interesting. Get a bunch of people together and talk about anything you want. It's not recorded. It's just, you know, extemporaneous. It's and contemporaneous. So that's with a $240 gift. And with a $1,000 gift, you can come to Portland once, you know, I don't know how long it's going to be, frankly. But I'm hoping within the next 6 months or so that everything is just settled down to the point where we can say, okay, cool, we can have people back in the studio. But that's with a $1,000 gift, the meet and greet, and I'll buy you lunch down the street as well. We'll work all that out. But the bottom line is that these pledge drives are what keeps this network on the air. There's not much else. There are some groups and some foundations and some wealthy individuals who you know, put up matches, and you know, we're hoping that there will be some of those throughout the next few weeks of the fund drive. But even with that, it really is you. You are who keeps this network on the air. And you know, I think of Free Speech TV as family. I think of you as family. This is. We have conversations every day on the radio. Sometimes people chastise me. Sometimes they put me in my place. Sometimes I learn from them. You know, occasionally I get a pat on the back. It's all good, but this is how a family functions. This Free Speech TV family. I don't know of anything like this that exists anyplace else. It's more personal and more intimate and more real in my experience than Facebook or other social media. You know, I think we've built strong bonds, many of us, to each other over the years. So help support our family, huh? Become part of the Free Speech TV family. With a one-time gift, you know, you can get one of these premiums, these free gifts, and or a sustaining gift. It's pretty painless to call and say, hey, you know, I'd like that new book from Hartmann there, and here's my $120. And by the way, after you've done that, sign me up for $10 a month for the rest of the year, or for the next year, because I'd like to know that, you know, every month, you know, a cup of coffee's worth of my money is going to help support Free Speech TV. I've always thought of money as a stand-in for energy, you know, whether it's psychic or physical or whatever, and in many ways it is. And so I'm asking you to share your energy, your potential, or even kinetic energy with Free Speech TV, with all the rest of our family, to keep this show on the air, on this network, to keep this network on the air more generally, to Free Speech TV's programming, to build out their ability to do outreach and bring in new supporters, and also to build new programming. I mean, there's so much potential here with this network. So please call now, 877-378-8669. Free Speech TV needs your help, and they need it now. Thank you.
This is the Thom Hartmann Program.
And welcome back to the third hour of our program. This is an absolutely fascinating topic for you. We're seeing now pro-Putin disinformation. In fact, the headline over at Mother Jones: pro-Putin disinformation is thriving in online anti-vax groups, which makes me wonder how much of the online anti-vax stuff was being driven out of Russia to begin with. But let's do a bit of a deep dive into the reality of all this stuff, how it comes about, how it is that people believe these wackadoodle conspiracies. Kelly Weill is on the line. Kelly is a journalist with the Daily Beast and the author of a new book, Off the Edge: Flat Earthers, Conspiracy Culture, and Why People Will Believe Anything. The website, thedailybeast.com, and Kelly Weill, W-E-I-L-L, on Twitter. Kelly, welcome to the program. So let's start at the beginning. By the way, I love the piece over on Daily Beast, how the father of flat earthers arose from a nutty commune. And before we get to that story, Why is it that we're so vulnerable to conspiracy theories? And tell us about this study where people were basically primed to believe a conspiracy theory, and sure enough, it worked out.
Mm-hmm. You know, to an extent, everybody is susceptible to conspiracy theories. We go looking for conspiracy theories when we feel like the available information is insufficient or it's upsetting. It doesn't uphold our prior beliefs. And so in those moments, we go looking for alternative answers. Now, what's really interesting is that we found other instances that make people even more vulnerable to conspiracy theories. It turns out that if you put people in a frightening situation, they are more likely to believe a kooky explanation for it. So there are a lot of factors that go into conspiracy belief, and it's interesting to see which ones can emerge in moments like now when we have a lot of legitimate fear and confusion.
I used to do international relief work, and I've worked literally all around the world on 4 continents. And one of the things that I noticed, particularly in the Middle East and in, I saw it a lot in Uganda when I was there during the Civil War in 1980, when the Tanzanians came in and ran Idi Amin out, was just these wild conspiracy theories that were essentially unchallenged. I mean, people just adopting them and assuming that they were true, whereas, in a middle-class country that didn't feel that threat, in Europe or in the United States, I was living in Germany at the time, you would not, people would laugh at such things. And in fact, when I tried to tell people about some of the stories I was hearing in some of these countries, they would go, that's crazy stuff. Is that what you're talking about?
Yes and no. I mean, people are certainly more likely to believe outlandish conspiracy theories when the moment calls for it. Right now, in the fog of war, we're seeing a lot of really strange disinformation, which I think you alluded to in the opening to this program. So the stranger the circumstances, the stranger the possible explanation that people might turn to is. But it's not just people in disadvantaged situations that can believe crazy things. And in this book, I dove into flat Earth, which actually emerged from reasonably well-off countries and still thrives among people who are, we would say, relatively advantaged.
Yeah, tell us the story of, is it Maneh Fain or Fan?
Maneh Fan. This was a failed utopia in the UK in the 1830s. And it came, again, we talk about times of confusion. This was a time of economic upheaval. People were looking for new ways to live and to think of themselves as workers. And this commune failed because there was issues with alcoholism and nobody really wanted to work. But its real lasting legacy was one of its leaders used some of the land on that commune to start conducting experiments to claim Earth was flat. They lived on a very marshy, flat plain, and it sort of looked like it to the naked eye. And after this utopia fell apart, he started looking for new ways to make business. He sold bogus medicine for a little while, and he really made it big when he started selling pamphlets and then books and then lecture circuits claiming that Earth was flat. And he started getting a bit of a following. And unfortunately, that legacy lives with us to this day.
Literally, I'm looking for his name. It was Rowbotham, right?
Yes.
Yeah, Mr. Rowbotham. Is he actually, this was 1838. There is an active flat Earth society, as it were, around the world. They're very active on the internet. Some of them appear to be actual true believers, as opposed to people who are just, think it's kind of clever, sort of like the birds aren't real thing. Are they quoting this guy Rowbotham?
Yes and no. I mean, a lot of the foundational beliefs that Rowbotham laid out have remained the same. They believe that Earth is a flat disk and it's encircled by an ice wall. And some of them now believe that it's also enclosed in a big dome, almost like a snow globe. So they do go back and cite those foundational flat Earth texts, but it's evolved a lot since then because they've needed to make excuses for new information, like, what's going on with outer space travel, which we now have. So it's evolved, and yet its core claims and I think its core emotional appeal for people has stayed pretty consistent.
Yeah, we're talking with Kelly Weill, whose new book is Off the Edge, Flat Earthers, Conspiracy Culture, and Why People Will Believe Anything. So I have this story from Mother Jones by Catherine Joyce that these conspiracy theories that are now being shared on social media, particularly Facebook, in the anti-vax groups, are now putting forward pro-Putin conspiracy theories. Christiane Northrup, an influential holistic medicine practitioner who regularly spreads pandemic misinformation, shared with her followers a map that supposedly showed secret labs in Ukraine that she insists is where viruses are being created. She said the U.S. government conducted biological experiments with potentially lethal outcome on 4,400 soldiers in Ukraine and 1,000 soldiers in Georgia. And it goes on and on. I mean, you know, she's actually in this article identifying about a dozen of these really relatively high-profile anti-vax folks who are now pushing, anti-Ukraine. I called it pro-Putin to begin with, but it's really anti-Ukraine propaganda. And look at all the corruption. This is an actual quote from one of the Facebook group called Stop the Tyranny. Look at all the corruption installed in Ukraine. Putin is against the New World Order and child trafficking. The moment you realize Putin isn't fighting Ukraine, he's fighting the deep state in Ukraine. I mean, what is this? Is this a commentary on human nature? Is this a commentary on how effective the ability of a foreign government to infiltrate a Facebook group can be? What does that tell you, having done this deep dive research and written this book?
You know, there is an extent to which Russia has pushed vaccine disinformation in the U.S., but it even predates COVID. And at this point, I wouldn't say that this is Russian infiltration as much as it is U.S. conspiracy theorist cynicism. Conspiracy theories aren't just a belief system. They also work as a bit of an identity for people. They identify with their conspiracy group, and sometimes it's a very literal Facebook group or even an influential conspiracy voice like a YouTuber or an Instagram influencer. These influencers need to not just promote their theory, but promote distrust in mainstream narratives. So that's why you'll see, even though these people have no idea what's going on in Ukraine, that when a new crisis emerges, they retool it to fit their narrative, which in this case is something to do with US bioweapons or just this idea that you cannot trust the available information, that the real story is actually the reverse. So that's one element of it. I think it's just pure cynicism. And the other, frankly, is a lot of these conspiracy movements have a strong anti-democratic strain. It's not inherent in them, but I have noticed this a lot, often in anti-vax communities. And there is a bit of a veneration of Russian strongman aggression. And I think a lot of these influencers are very primed to defend Putin in this moment. And so those two narratives, both being pro-Putin and being anti-fact, I think go hand in hand here.
We have about maybe just a little bit more than 2 minutes before we're going to hit our hard break here. So we've got this synthesis of conspiracy theories, humans being primed to basically try to figure out how the world works. I mean, that's intrinsic to our nature. Plus, perhaps authoritarian personalities. Most authoritarians are actually authoritarian followers rather than authoritarian leaders. And the, very human instinct to want mom and dad to take care of us. And I guess maybe that's part of authoritarianism, but I think there's a larger piece. Are you seeing a synthesis of these three things emerging in these conspiracy groups?
Very much so. I think a lot of people in conspiracy movements, although they do build themselves as free thinkers and independents, really are looking for someone with the answers. And it makes sense in a way. Conspiracy theories are a way of seeking order even in the world when the world seems chaotic and impossible to understand. So either via a theory that claims to have it all or via conspiracy influencers who speak to the audience like it's their flock and they're going to give them real truth.
How do we best push back on this? We have just about a minute here, Kelly.
It's really challenging. I think one of the best ways to combat this is not to debate people in a hostile way that makes people almost dig down into their beliefs further, but to talk to people in a human way and understand the emotional reason they go to these groups and try and show them that these leaders, that these conspiracy voices don't actually have their best interests at heart, and to try and forge that personal connection in the real reality-based world.
Yeah, I'm hearing from, well, I heard from a friend of mine who's a progressive the other day, oh, this is all about getting the Nazis out of Ukraine. And I'm like, no, it's not. But it's tough to just say, okay, well, let's talk about that.
It's really challenging. And I think it involves some willingness on the part of the believer to change their mind. You can't force people to change their minds. But I do think those conversations with people who you actually trust can help.
Yeah, it's a tough one. I also have, people who are afraid of the vaccine. I mean, it's amazing. Anyhow, Kelly Wild, the new book, Off the Edge, Flat Earthers, Conspiracy Culture, and Why People Will Believe Anything. Kelly, thanks so much for dropping by.
Thanks for having me.
My pleasure. Great talking with you. It's 18 minutes past the hour. We'll be back with more of the news of the day and your calls.
This is the Thom Hartmann Program.
Stick around, back with your calls and the news of the day right after this. Now, Sean, you. And welcome back. Elmore in New York City. Hey, Elmore, thanks for watching Free Speech TV. What's on your mind today?
Yeah, hi, Tom. I'm just addressing what you just had Kelly on about conspiracy theories and how people are crazy if they have these conspiracy theories. You wrote a whole book, Legacy of Secrecy, about a conspiracy theory.
You're right.
I saw the program in November with, 3-hour program with you about Kennedy. So how do you just clarify that a little bit more? How, you don't believe in theories? Or I think that, sometimes, there is a conspiracy.
Yeah, no, I think that Kelly's point, and one of the points that Kelly made in her book and in her article in Daily Beast was that this is a basic human thing. It's an attempt to make sense out of the senseless. And, whether it's an attempt to understand, who killed Kennedy or whether there were people on the moon or, whatever it may be, I think it's just a kind of a normal human instinct. And, that's what happens.
But I mean, in your book, you wrote that, you talk about how there was a conspiracy to kill Kennedy. It wasn't just Lee Harvey Oswald.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And I think that there was, frankly. So call me a conspiracy theorist, too. Elmore, thanks for the call. Michael in Malby, Washington. Hey, Michael, what's on your mind today?
Yeah, I was looking at the internet about the far east of Russia. I understood that there was some separatist talk there. And it said that since 2016, that Putin formed the Far East Federal District. He grouped a bunch of the states over there together. And he sent 500,000 refugees from the Donbass and the Donetsk to permanently resettle there.
Right.
And I just wondered, is this true, or what's going on? Was he trying to depopulate Ukraine of Ukrainians so he can fill it up with Russians?
Well, to a certain extent, a lot of that happened during the Soviet times. With regard to stories that are coming out of that region, over the last 8 years, it's almost impossible to know because disinformation is just absolutely everywhere. It's just nuts, and so it's very hard to know.
Yeah, the two sites is one of the worldatlas.com. I don't know if that's real or not.
Probably not.
And then Institute of Modern Russia also.
Yeah. The same thing. Again, just because something's published on the internet doesn't make it true. That said, the Donbass region, the big struggle there for both Russia and Ukraine is this fight between ethnic Russian speakers who largely think of themselves as Russian and ethnic Ukrainian speakers who largely think of themselves as Ukrainians. And we saw this in Crimea as well. And they had it wasn't called a referendum. What's it called? A plebiscite? I forget the word that was used, but basically a vote in Crimea Do we stay with Ukraine or do we go with Russia? And there were people arguing that it was rigged by Russia, and there were people arguing it was rigged by Crimea or by Ukraine. And I frankly don't know. But basically the outcome of that was we want to go with Russia. That's a whole different thing from what's going on in Donbass. Nobody, to the best of my knowledge, is suggesting a vote in the Donbass region.
Oh, no, but... All right. Thank you, Tom.
Yeah, thanks a lot, Michael. I got to run here. It's 22 minutes past the hour. Back with your calls and more of the news of the day right after this. Stick around. Missed my opening rant today? It's usually published over at HartmannReport.com, where you can read it and share it with your friends for free. Check it out, HartmannReport.com. We have not in the United States historically protected people's feelings by law. We protect, people from being victims of actions. You can't be discriminated against in a store or a restaurant or a mortgage or anything else based on your race or your gender or your ethnicity or in many cases, your sexual identity or gender identity. But it is not typically, typically we don't put into law, you may not hurt somebody's feelings. But that's exactly what Florida is doing with their so-called woke act, the Stop the Wrongs to Our Kids and Employees Act, which basically threatens teachers if they cause their white children or any children to, quote, feel discomfort, guilt, or anguish as a result of what's being taught. This is a dangerous precedent. There's a whole video about it over at thomhartmann.com. You can check it out. Welcome back. Thom Hartmann here with you, picking up your phone calls. By the way, we have another quick guest here at the bottom of the hour to talk about this case that's going before the Supreme Court. But other than that, it's, I'll be picking up your phone calls here. Daniel in Bakersfield, California. Hey, Daniel, thanks for listening to SiriusXM. What's on your mind today?
Hey, good afternoon there, Tom. I listen to you every day. I'm out on my route. I deliver pastries to these convenience stores, and I put you on my AirPods.
Sounds like a tempting job.
Oh yeah, I'm an independent contractor, so I buy it from the bakery and I deliver it to these these chain stores. But the reason I was calling is because I even ordered an electric truck so I can convert it over. But the reason I was calling is we could do our part. I even wrote an op-ed. Bakersfield is a little red dot right in the middle of California, the Kern County. Where's where Kevin McCarthy is from, and the reason I was calling is because I've had an electric car for 6 years, a Chevy Bolt. Goes about 230 miles on a charge. I installed a charger in my garage, and I put 100% offset solar panels on my roof. Wow. I have a $10 tie-in bill for my electricity, and that's a 2,500 square foot home. I have a $10, and I went ahead and you took advantage of the subsidies that was offered, and I bought them, and then they gave me, on my taxes, I got to deduct 26% or 30% at the time. And my wife, she drives this car. Picks up grandkids and just drives it everywhere. And literally, it's got 60,000 miles. And the electric cars do not have any maintenance involved in them. We put a set of tires on it at Costco, and that's it.
Yeah, there's no engine, there's no oil to change, there's no filters to replace. It's it's got a battery and a couple of motors.
There's several industries that are fighting it. Even the car industry is fighting it because what's going to happen to these techs? It's going to be more like a phone tech or electronic. And
my understanding is that they're actually, as they make them at scale, they're much more profitable than gasoline engines because the electric motors just have basically the armature and the wires. It's straightforward stuff, whereas making engines is really complicated. Gasoline engines.
And then they ask you how long do the batteries last? I tell them the batteries last longer than that engine will ever last.
Yeah, there you go. And they've got pickup like you can't believe, Daniel. And as you well know,
they do.
It's just incredible.
I ordered the new Ford Lightning, and I reserved it, and I'm in line for it. So I'm going to buy a little
That's so
cargo
cool.
trailer
That's so
to pull my stuff around, and we could do this, man. I wrote an op-ed here in Bakersfield. They didn't.
I got it. Daniel, I'm sorry. We're out of time, but thank you.
You're listening to the Thom Hartmann Program. Call 202-808-9925.
We'll be right back. I want to talk about the Supreme Court case that could destroy the EPA, and then I'll be back with your calls, so stick around. We'll be right back. Well, here we are 4/5 of the way through the week and still rolling. It's still moving along with our Free Speech TV Fund Drive. A special thanks to those of you who have called in or made your contributions, texted 44321 or called 877-378-8669 or gone to Free Speech TV to make your contributions. Thank you for those of you who have already done so. A number of people have answered the call. We're still behind. A little bit behind on our goals for the week and way behind on our goal for this pledge drive, which will run more than a week. But let's try to speed it up, huh? Let's try to get a lot of this out of the way. Please call now, 877-378-8669, or text FSTV to 44321, and they'll bounce a link back to you that you can use to make a contribution right away, and you'll know it's a safe link because it's a response to a text you sent out. There are a whole bunch of goodies that Free Speech TV is offering on this pledge drive. My favorite, of course, is The Hidden History of Big Brother in America. I'll get to that in just a second, because whenever I've got a brand new book out, we always toss it into these pledge drives, and I've been doing 2 a year now for 4 years. I guess this is the 7th book. So anyway, I'll get to that in a second. Here's the list. With a $20 gift, these are your one-time gifts. With a $20 gift, you have your choice of the Free Speech TV Clear sticker, or the Thom Hartmann University bumper sticker, or the Free Speech TV bumper sticker. With a $50 gift, there's the Free Speech TV Seed Bomb. Celebrate Earth Day every day. These are, you just toss them out in the lawn or put them in the some soft dirt, and boom, you're going to have some flowers. They're beautiful. With a $75 gift, you have your choice of the Free Speech TV hat or the Free Speech TV mug. With a $100 gift, Free Speech TV will plant a tree for you, or their contractor will plant a tree for you for reforestation, regreening the world, something that the world rather desperately needs right now. With a $120 gift, you can get your autographed copy of my newest book. It doesn't even come out for another week, but Free Speech TV, I know, got a couple of cases of them in advance from the publisher. The Hidden History of Big Brother, how the death of privacy and the rise of surveillance threaten us and our democracy. And it'll have a book plate in there that I have autographed for you. Or if you don't want the book, you can get with a $120 gift, you can get the Free Speech TV Solidarity t-shirt. With a $240 gift, you can join a bunch of us on a Free Speech TV meet and greet. These are always fun and interesting. Get a bunch of people together and talk about anything you want. It's not recorded. It's just, extemporaneous. And contemporaneous. So that's with a $240 gift. And with a $1,000 gift, you can come to Portland once, I don't know how long it's going to be, frankly. But I'm hoping within the next 6 months or so that everything is just settled down to the point where we can say, okay, cool, we can have people back in the studio. But that's with a $1,000 gift, the meet and greet, and I'll buy you lunch down the street as well. We'll work all that out. But the bottom line is that these pledge drives are what keeps this network on the air. There's not much else. There are some groups and some foundations and some wealthy individuals who put up matches, and we're hoping that there will be some of those throughout the next few weeks of the fund drive. But even with that, it really is you. You are who keeps this network on the air. And I think of Free Speech TV as family. I think of you as family. We have conversations every day on the radio. Sometimes people chastise me. Sometimes they put me in my place. Sometimes I learn from them. Occasionally I get a pat on the back. It's all good, but this is how a family functions. This Free Speech TV family. I don't know of anything like this that exists anyplace else. It's more personal and more intimate and more real, in my experience, than Facebook or other social media. I think we've built strong bonds, many of us, to each other over the years. So help support our family, huh? Become part of the Free Speech TV family. With a one-time gift, you can get one of these premiums, these free gifts, and or a sustaining gift. It's pretty painless to call and say, hey, I'd like that new book from Hartmann there, and here's my $120. And by the way, after you've done that, sign me up for $10 a month for the rest of the year, or for the next year, because I'd like to know that every month, a cup of coffee's worth of my money is going to help support Free Speech TV. I've always thought of money as a stand-in for energy, whether it's psychic or physical or whatever, and in many ways it is. And so I'm asking you to share your energy, your potential, or even kinetic energy with Free Speech TV, with all the rest of our family, to keep this show on the air, on this network, to keep this network on the air more generally, to Free Speech TV's programming, to build out their ability to do outreach and bring in new supporters, and also to build new programming. I mean, there's so much potential here with this network. So please call now, 877-378-8669. Free Speech TV needs your help. Thank you. Our 1-hour free podcast recaps our show, and it's available wherever fine podcasts are found. And we have the full 3-hour podcast available over at thomhartmann.com if you want to really support our program. So you remember the administration originally said that we're going to give 4 free COVID tests to every household in America. And you can do that, get them delivered by the post office for free by going to covidtests.gov, covidtests.gov. But they said that they're not going to provide free test kits to people on Medicare. Instead, you have to go to covidtest.gov and get your 4 free test kits. Well, they have rethought this. This is a brand new policy. And this will be the first time that Medicare covers free over-the-counter tests of any kind for people who are, or offers free over-the-counter tests for anybody who's on Medicare. The pharmacy, Medicare pays the pharmacy direct, and you pick it up from your pharmacy. So just an FYI on that. And there are a few other dimensions that have to do with TRICARE and a few other things. We've got a video about it that's over at thomhartmann.com that you can check out. And welcome back. Thom Hartmann here with you. On the line with us is Amy Westervelt, investigative journalist, host of the most listened to climate podcast, Drilled, and a new climate podcast about climate lawsuits titled Damages. The links to those are podlink.to/damages or drilledpodcast.com. Amy's Twitter handle is Amy Westervelt, Westervelt, over on Twitter. Amy, welcome to the program. The Supreme Court has agreed to hear a case that, as far as I can tell, is about a program, a federal program that literally never went into place. What's going on with this?
Correct. Yeah, it's very strange. There was a suit filed around the Clean Power Plan back in 2016, 2015. And of course, the Clean Power Plan was never actually implemented.
This is Obama's.
So this is Obama's Clean Power Plan, yes. So the case is West Virginia versus EPA. It started as an argument about the Clean Power Plan. The Clean Power Plan has still never been implemented. So it's unclear why the Supreme Court is continuing to hear this case, but they heard oral arguments on Monday. They could still, at this point, decide not to issue a ruling. That would be in keeping with all precedent, but we have a very strange court at the moment, so it's a little bit up in the air what they will do.
Right. Now, Neil Gorsuch, these guys have these funny words that they come up with to justify their wackadoodle theories. Scalia used to say, "I'm an originalist. I'm channeling the founders," like he knew
Right.
what John Adams was thinking, and
he knew his intention.
right?
Yes.
as if Scalia had no idea that John Adams and Thomas Jefferson hated each other so much over their politics that the last 2 years that Jefferson was Adams's vice president, they literally didn't talk and they wouldn't be in the same building together. I mean, but he could channel them and he knew what they all thought. So anyhow, that was that old scam. Now we've got Neil Gorsuch, and he's got a new scam, being a textualist. In other words, I understand exactly what these words mean, and only I understand what these words mean. And one of Gorsuch's scams, if I understand this correctly, which is a complete repudiation, in my opinion, going back to John Jay of Supreme Court precedent, is to say that if Congress passes a law that says, for example, we're going to create an agency called the Environmental Protection Agency, and we're going to empower that agency to protect the environment. And the EPA says, okay, part of the environmental damage is happening because of carbon in the atmosphere, and so we're going to regulate carbon. Now, that all seems common sense, but Neil Gorsuch has come out and said, not in this specific case, but as much as, and correct me if I have any of this wrong, Neil Gorsuch has come out and said, no, if Congress wanted the EPA to regulate carbon, the law had to say the EPA may regulate carbon. If the Congress wanted the EPA to regulate benzene, the law had to have the word benzene in it. If Congress wanted the EPA to regulate gas fumes at the gas pump, which they do, it had to have gas fumes at the gas pump added. In other words, Congress should have done this micromanagement. Congress should have held months and months of hearings. Congress should have hired hundreds of experts and scientists, as the EPA does. And Congress should have come to these conclusions, and then the EPA would simply be the cop on the beat who enforces the rules. It seems to me like that insane, frankly, originalist theory that Neil Gorsuch has been pitching for most of his career. His mother, of course, was the disgraced former head of the EPA under Reagan. She had to resign after 3 years under a cloud of scandal and controversy. That this is just a vehicle for Neil Gorsuch's wackadoodle idea, and apparently he's got a few other conservatives on board with it.
Yeah, I think Amy Coney Barrett is a real friend and ally.
Well, her father was a lawyer for what? Chevron, wasn't it?
Shell. She was Shell. Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah. So what you're describing is something called the non-delegation doctrine, and it basically means that Congress can't delegate anything to regulatory agencies, in a nutshell. And it has only ever been invoked 2 times in the history of the court, both in 1936. So that kind of tells you the timeline that Neil Gorsuch wishes he was living in. Right. And yeah, I do think that it could come up in this case. It wasn't included in any of the briefings for the case, but it did come up in questioning from both Gorsuch and Amy Coney Barrett. Along with another kind of related thing that's called the major questions doctrine. So this is basically that, Congress shouldn't leave any major questions up to agencies to figure out. And they are absolutely embracing this in general. We saw the major questions doctrine used to toss out OSHA vaccine requirements. We saw it used to get rid of the eviction moratorium. That's another one that, it has existed since 1980, and it's been used 5 times before this year. This year, it's already been invoked 3 times, including in this case. So we're starting to see, okay, these are the tools that the right wing is going to try to use to roll us back to really essentially a pre-New Deal era.
Right.
That's the goal.
Yeah, and this also seems like the fulfillment of the dream of David Koch, who has now passed away. But in 1980, he ran for vice president on the Libertarian ticket on a platform of eliminate the EPA, eliminate the Labor Department, eliminate the Education Department, eliminate all regulatory agencies. Period. Full stop. Eliminate the IRS. The only thing we should have is the military and local communities can fund their police departments, and we have to have the court system so that corporations can litigate fraud issues. And that's it.
Get rid of public schools too, importantly.
Oh yeah, absolutely. Yeah, he didn't want any public schools. And so which raises a question, Amy Westervelt, if with the great podcast Drilled in Damages, by the way, I want to plug your work because it's so vital. If the Supreme Court rules that, using either of those doctrines, that the EPA can't regulate carbon in this case without congressional action, does that mean then that the Food and Drug Administration cannot look for salmonella in meat because salmonella, that word, doesn't appear in the enabling legislation? Does that mean that the U.S. Department of Agriculture, does that mean that the Food and Drug Administration can't regulate which pharmaceuticals require a prescription and which ones don't because the words, Valium and Cipro don't appear in the legislation?
Yeah, I mean, that's kind of the direction that it's headed. In this case, because it's about a policy that doesn't exist, it seems so laughable that they're continuing to even discuss it. But because it's about a policy that doesn't exist, they can't actually rule on anything. All they can do is give what's called an advisory ruling, which historically federal courts have not been allowed to give, but I'm not sure what they're going to do in this situation. So they can issue an advisory ruling that effectively warns EPA off of regulating greenhouse gas emissions, particularly from power plants. I think it might be slightly limited by the original filing to power plants, but still, it's a slippery slope here. And I think that what we're seeing really clearly with this case is that we're going to see a lot more of this type of argument against the EPA being able to regulate greenhouse gas emissions, period.
Yeah. Well, this is my concern too, is that they may do like they did with Citizens United. Tell me if it's too late for that. I mean, Citizens United was originally a very narrow case about whether this movie that these guys wanted to produce about how terrible Hillary Clinton was could be shown 90 days within the 90-day window before the election, because it was considered by the original court that adjudicated it, it was considered a campaign thing, and it had to be listed as a campaign contribution, essentially, and they weren't doing that. And so that very narrow piece of law, the court went back to the Citizens United people and said, hey, blow this up huge and make it all about whether corporations are persons and whether, politicians being owned by billionaires is free speech, and we'll really do something with this. And of course, we got Citizens United out of that. Is it possible that this could lead to a similar outcome that basically guts the EPA?
I feel like because they can't really issue a binding ruling, I don't think that this case in particular could end there, but I think that this line of thinking could end there, and that I think it'll be not too long before we have another case that they can rule on. And it looks like what they want to do is say that only Congress has the authority to pass laws around regulating greenhouse gas emissions. And why do they want that? Because they know that Congress won't do it.
Right. The wonderful filibuster, yeah.
It's just like, it's quite disappointing, because also, everyone's been like, oh, Biden needs to do executive actions on this. Well, if every time he does, it's going to wind up in this argument, then where are we at? Then
you've got an even bigger mess. Amy Westervelt, check out drilledpodcast.com and podlink.to/damages for her 2 podcasts, Drilled and Damages. You can follow her on Twitter at Amy Westervelt, VELT. Amy, thanks so much for dropping by.
Thank you. Thanks for having me.
My pleasure. Great talking with you.
You're listening to Thom Hartmann. Visit thomhartmann.com for audio and video archive.
And I will pick up your calls on the other side of this break. It's 46 minutes past the hour in the Thom Hartmann Program, home of the political revolution. And welcome back. George in Chicago, watching us on Free Speech TV. Hey, George, what's on your mind today?
Well, this is something that's been on my mind for, it's been about a week, I guess, since all this stuff taking place. But my name is George Hines, and it's also G-Ra. It's my gifted name. Like, I have a slogan that I came up with about this situation that we're in. We all, like Ukrainians, must fight to stop fighting war.
I like it.
Yes, I felt that.
Yeah.
And it's like the other day, what's his name? Kenyatta. And I felt so hurt for you because he narrowly, with your gifted way of thinking, you looked at the George Floyd situation and could blend it in, not blend it in, but like could like angle it with the idea that pain that he went through has a similarity to the pain that we're all going through with this situation.
Yeah.
And you did it so artfully, and the way he approached it was so narrow, it just showed that he's not the force that he thinks he is.
Well, I wouldn't say that, George. I'm not sure that he had read my op-ed. The one sentence in it that talked about George Floyd, other than the headline, said that, essentially, I don't recall the exact words, but, had there not been that 17-year-old girl with the video camera, the world wouldn't have known about George Floyd. The police department would have covered it up. He would have just been another, black guy murdered by the police that nobody ever heard about and the police justified. But because of that camera, and that was my point, that there's cameras all over Ukraine, and we're, this is our first TikTok war. But,
all over the world, and that's all this stuff is so clear, is that we must know that, like you was talking about the woke situation. Like when they talk about woke is a word that the brothers brought out, saying like you're wide awake, you know what's happening.
Yep.
It's like what's happening in the 70s. They were saying you hip, and hip is like where a train takes you, where a coal train takes you.
Yeah.
It's a place that is an important power. Like Miles Davis takes you to a setting that only you could get from Miles Davis.
You're right.
Is an important, powerful word, and that's why they make all these words fear. They make fear out of things like the situation with what's his name? Oh boy, the Antifa. Antifa.
Yeah. Yeah. No, I get what you're saying, George. George, thank you. Thanks for your kind words. And I appreciate the call. It's 10 minutes before the hour. We'll be back with more of your calls in just a moment. Stick around. It's the Thom Hartmann Program, speaking the truth to the multinational corporations. We'd really rather you didn't know all of that. Hey, thanks so much for sharing our program and for reaching out to our stations and sponsors and letting them know that you're listening. It really means a lot to us. Hey, just wanted to flag for you this amazing study that came out of the Department of Global Public Health at the University of Bergen in Norway. Lars Fadnes is the professor who oversaw it. They took a massive database of millions and millions of people all around the world, and the goal was to look at life expectancy. And they were looking at everything from pollution to wars to poverty to diet. And because there was so much data and such a large population base, they were able to separate out individual pieces. And what they found, and just looking at the diet piece of this, what they found was that going with what you and I might call the Mediterranean diet, they don't call it that in the study. What they basically say is no red meat, very little dairy, lots of fish, nuts, legumes as the principal protein sources, and lots and lots and lots of fresh fruits and veggies would add 10 years of lifespan to the typical 20-year-old and 8 years of lifespan to the typical 60-year-old. The whole video about it is over at thomhartmann.com. Check it out. Welcome back. Let's pick up some of your phone calls here and see what's on your mind. Robin in Santa Fe. Hey, Robin, what's up?
Hi, Tom. I read an article yesterday in the New York Times about how the lithium in Ukraine, they've got 500,000 tons of lithium iodide. And I was wondering if you think that was part of their initiative for starting this war?
I do. Ukraine is one of the richest nations in the world in terms of lithium, which is, of course, necessary to make batteries and to make, electric cars. Ukraine is also, I think, the 5th largest supplier of wheat in the world. It's the breadbasket of Europe. Ukraine is the largest, physically, geographically, the largest country in Europe. It has, and not just lithium, by the way, it's got a whole bunch of other rare earth minerals, in addition to just, the normal resources. They've also got they have massive fields of potential oil and gas that could be fracked. And they've got a lot of coal. So, yeah, if somebody was to come along and say, I have proof that this is a resource war and Russia's just trying to grab resources here, I haven't seen that evidence laid out other than the mention like you have, pointing this out. But the A equals B kind of part of that. But I would certainly, consider that a credible theory. It makes perfect sense for me. So, Robin, I gotta move along, but thank you for the call. Thanks for pointing that out. Tom in Seal Beach, California. Hey, Tom, what's on your mind?
Well, I'm just looking at Neil Gorsuch's logic on the EPA, and it seems to me that the same logic should apply to the Department of Defense. And if that's the case, meaning we can't spend anything in a defense budget without specific approval, like line item approval.
Oh, so Congress has to say, yes, the Defense Department can have 22,000 tanks, 37 F-37s or whatever.
And they need to start giving us accounting of everything they spend and what they spend it for.
The bottom line is Neil Gorsuch is just as corrupt and crazy as his mother was. I mean, he's a real chip off the old block, and that's the thing that I think really needs to be pointed out to everybody. Tom, thanks. Good point. Excellent point. Steve in Gresham, Oregon. Hey, Steve, what's on your mind?
Hey, I wanted to talk about the current Supreme Court nominee.
Yeah.
Ketanji question. Yeah, people question if maybe more qualified candidates had been passed over to pick her for being a black woman. Really, the only qualification for a Supreme Court nominee is that they be breathing.
Yeah, you're right. There are no qualifications in the Constitution. In fact, the only positions that have qualifications are the presidency and members of Congress, which are age qualifications and citizenship for the presidency.
Yeah. And some people seem to think that, maybe being a judge is the qualification. Well, we have hundreds, if not well over 1,000 federal judges in this country. And so basically she is one of over 1,000 people that are qualified for the job. Right. When has the singularly most qualified person ever been nominated for the Supreme Court?
Yeah,
never.
Probably never. This is just pure racism, Steve. I mean, it's Tucker Carlson, Ted Cruz, their whole pitch. It's just pure racism, pure and simple. Steve, thanks for pointing that out. Len in Cocoa Beach, Florida. Hey, Len, you got the last minute. What's up?
Yeah. I just want to say that Ron DeSantis lost his cool, lost his mind yesterday.
Telling those kids to take off their masks?
Yeah, tell those kids to take off those masks. And I think he's upset because he came in second way behind Trump in the straw poll at CPAC last weekend.
Oh yeah, I forgot about that. He pulled less than 10%, didn't he? Wasn't it like 7 or 8%? Something like it.
20-something percent.
Oh, 20-something. Okay. Close enough.
And he was totally upset, and it was just totally inappropriate. And that just lets you know that he doesn't even believe in his own corrupt policies that he's trying to push.
No, he doesn't. Ron DeSantis wants to be president. He wants power. And that kind of person who's willing to lie to get power who's willing to have people die. I mean, look at all the people who've died in Florida to get power.
Right.
That's not the kind of person you want in the White House. We had one of those for 4 years, and it ended a year ago, and we're still suffering from that disaster. Len, thank you. Excellent, and thanks for listening to us on SiriusXM. We'll be back tomorrow, same time, same place. In the meantime, don't forget, democracy is not a spectator sport. It requires you, all of us. That includes you. And there's so much you can do and so many great organizations that you can hook up. And just telling your friends about great progressive media, for example, and spreading the word about what's going on in the world. You can do it. Be an agent of change. Tag, you're it. We'll see you tomorrow. Have a great afternoon. Be good to yourself and the people around you. Stay safe.
You've been listening to Thom Hartmann. For audio and video archives, visit thomhartmann.com.
These companies support the Thom Hartmann Program. They are HelloFresh, the #1 meal kit delivery service. More info at HelloFresh.com, code TOM. The Hidden History of Big Brother in America, How the Death of Privacy and the Rise of Surveillance Threaten Us and Our Democracy by Thom Hartmann. More information at all book outlets. Wild Alaskan Company, 100% sustainable wild-caught seafood delivered right to your door. More info at wildalaskancompany.com/Tom. Cozy Earth, better sleep, better you. More info at cozyearth.com, promo code TOM. The latest views and opinions from U.S. politics and other fascinating subjects too, including cutting-edge science reports at hartmanreport.com. And Dinovite, a whole food supplement for your pet's immune system. More info at dinovite.com.
We say fight back!
Well, here we are, 4/5 of the way through the week, and still rolling. It's still moving along with our Free Speech TV Fund Drive. A special